Good morning. I would like to call the Committee on Budget to order. It is Tuesday, July 25, 20. Councilmember Kiaina, in accordance with Section 92-3.7, the Hawaii Revised Statutes, please identify each person who is with you at your location.
Aloha, Chair. Today, with me at my location will be Darlene Nicoletti and Marcel Tisdale.
Okay, thank you very much. So pursuant to Section 92-3.7, the Hawaii Revised Statutes, this meeting will be conducted as a remote meeting by interactive conference technology with the following procedures in effect for the meeting. Members of the public will be allowed to provide oral testimony on all items on the agenda in two ways, remotely and in person, in the council chamber. Remote and in-person oral testimony will be allowed when the agenda item is taken up. Before testifying, each person shall state their name. Each speaker may not have anyone else read their statement and is limited to a 1-minute presentation on each item. All persons who have registered to testify remotely by video conference will be called upon first. When your name is called, please monitor your screen and activate your audio feed when prompted. I will then give the persons who have not registered an opportunity to offer testimony. Please utilize the raise hand feature on Zoom to be called upon. For those using the telephone, on telephone only, please press *9 to indicate your desire to speak. I will identify you by your last three, I think *6 to indicate your desire to speak. I will identify you by the last three digits of your phone number, and when your phone number is called, please press *6 to unmute yourself when prompted. One moment. Oh, okay. Got it. I would like to correct myself and clarify that to raise your hand, you press *6, and then to unmute yourself, you press *6. And I will repeat that later on if needed. So some friendly reminders and tips. Please video conference from a quiet location if possible. If you're also watching the proceedings on Olelo, please mute your television at the time you are called to testify. When the timer on the screen reaches 0, please conclude your remarks promptly. Once all the remote testifiers have testified, I will proceed to in-person testimony in the council chamber. Any persons who have not registered will be given an opportunity to speak following the oral testimonies of the registered speakers. HRS Section 92-3.7 requires all votes at remote meetings to be conducted by roll call unless unanimous. Therefore, I will first call for objections, and if there are any, I will call for a roll call vote. For those council members participating from outside of the council chamber, in accordance with HRS Section 92-3.7, this meeting will automatically recess if we lose audiovisual contact with you and cannot reconvene until we reestablish contact. Therefore, please announce beforehand if you will be voluntarily signing out of the meeting. Written testimonies, including the testifier's address, email address, and phone number, will be available to the public as described on the posted agenda. And as a courtesy, please silence or turn off all cell phones. And I would also like to welcome to the committee Council Chair Tommy Waters. Moving forward, we have for action Resolution 23-148, which confirms the appointment of Gwinnett Higa to the Board of Review 1 for Real Property Tax Appeals of the City and County of Honolulu for a term to expire on June 30, 2028. With us, we do have the appointee, Ms. Higa, with us here today. Good morning. Oh, sorry, can you press the on-off over there?
Is that it?
Perfect, I can hear you great.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning, and if you have anything you would like to say, and then we can ask questions.
I'm just here to introduce myself and thank you for considering my nomination.
Thank you. And this is just for everyone's information, a new appointment. And I was wondering, Ms. Higa, your understanding of the Board of Review for real property tax. Do you have an understanding of that?
I feel I do, and I feel that it's a very important process to ensure that there's fairness and transparency in the process of assessing the property tax.
Thank you. And I know that you do have, if you do pass out of this committee, you will also be before the full council. But did you get the opportunity to meet with all the council members yet?
I have not met them yet.
Okay, well, I look forward to meeting with you very soon, but I do encourage you to meet with the rest of the members as well. Members, are there any questions for Ms. Higa? Okay, we have our committee vice chair, Wire.
Mahalo, Chair. And thank you, Ms. Higa, for being willing to serve and just looking at your resume for also your community service over the years and also your family service to the city. So really appreciate that.
Thank you.
You know, and looking at the jurisdiction of the appeals board, I know it's fairly straightforward in terms of how decisions are made, but I'm just curious, given what our community has faced with, you know, the dramatic increases in home valuations, just wanted to make sure, or maybe talk through your understanding of how, you know, folks are being affected, because I know we've had a lot of, you know, appeals filed just because of how big the increase was, particularly, you know, North Shore, I think, saw an average of 20%, 18% in Kolaloa. I think every district saw at least 10% or more. So can you just talk me through a little bit of your thoughts of what we're seeing in terms of that, and maybe even the impacts on the professional side? I know you're an insurance agent.
Yes. Yeah, I do feel I have a pretty good understanding of values, although I'm certainly no expert. I do have a real estate license, which is inactive, just because I own a few investment properties. I've been in the insurance industry for 35 years, and through those years, I've had to assess hundreds of homes and look at appraisals and values. So I feel I do have an understanding of the process, although I'm no expert, but I feel I can bring a fair assessment when there is an appeal to make a valuation.
Okay, I appreciate that. And then maybe just to kind of end, with that in mind, do you feel like you understand the nuance in the community? Oftentimes community members don't always understand, you know, the line-by-line criteria. And so I think oftentimes there's gonna be a need for empathy and being able to, you know, relay information in a way that everybody can understand, and maybe even help folks walk through the process at times.
Yes, exactly. And I look forward to, if I'm nominated, becoming involved in that and hopefully share more transparency to those appealing and to the public in general.
Okay, appreciate that. Mahalo, mahalo, Chair.
Hello, Committee Vice Chair. Members, any other questions? Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, Ms. Higa.
Thank you.
And I just wanted to, if there's an opportunity, would like to invite the Budget and Fiscal Services Director, if there's anything you'd like to provide. Oh, okay, our Director Kreki.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Director of Community Services, Anton Krucky. I did submit written testimony on Gwynette's behalf. I've known her for many years and have also, as a client of hers, but have also been with her in the community, whether it be Rotary or other things. So I've watched her colleagues and the respect that they have for her. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Director Krucky. I appreciate it. Okay, thank you. Director Kano, yay, nay? Okay, okay.
Good morning, Budget Chair Cordero, Chair Waters, and Vice Budget Chair Wire, Andy Kawano, Director of Budget and Fiscal Services. I don't know the prospective Board of Review member, Gwynette Higa, personally, but I've talked to our staff, and they are very positive about her appointment, and feels that she's very engaged in their interactions with her, intelligent, and would be a good addition to the Board of Review.
Thank you. And Director Kawano, just for people's knowledge, what is the role of the Board of Review Appeal #1? Board of Review #1 for real property tax appeals.
They, yeah, with regard to the Board of Review and real property tax Appeals, they are the members that listen to the appellant's argument for tax reduction in most cases, or to address any inequity, illegality, classification issue. And so they listen to the evidence, they ask questions, and they make a decision on what should transpire going forward.
Thank you. And I know in past hearings, we've seen like the numbers of appeals that the Board of Review receives, ones that do get heard, or, you presented that, I think. And so is there a goal for the Board of Review in general to possibly process more of the appeals either more efficiently or quicker, or is there any type of goals that you have for the Board of Review for real property tax appeals overall?
We, our major goal is that we want to listen to all of the claim for appeals, in an efficient manner. And we don't want to be punitive. We want to do what's right. So we listen to the facts and make a decision. But we want to ensure that we docket and hear out all of the appeals that are filed, and come to a reasonable, fair decision.
Thank you. Members, any questions? Okay, we have Council Chair Tommy Waters.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, Director. I'm just
Morning.
curious, how many appeals on average do the appeal board hear? Or how many appeals are filed, I should say? And then secondly, how many hearings do you actually have?
So the annual average prior to last year was anywhere from 1,500 to 1,700 appeals filed.
And then how many hearings? Do you have 1,500 hearings? And maybe we should ask the nominee, is you be able to attend 1,500 hearings? So before we actually ask that question, so do you actually have a hearing for each one of these?
Yes, and
Wow.
we don't always get through all of them, by June of the same year, the end of June. So it sometimes goes into the following year, but we listen to all of them. And there's more than one group, right, there's more than one board. So it's not just going to be Gwinnett and her team. There are other boards that listen to the appeals that are filed.
I'm not sure if you have these statistics, but we've had this discussion on other measures, and what is appealable is very limited. So my next question is, how many appeals are actually granted and BFS's decision is overturned by the Board of Appeals?
It depends on the year, but the typical range is in terms of granted, the average typically is, I would say, close to 30%, 30 to 35%. I think our administrator who's here reported earlier this year that this year there were more appeals filed. I think there were about 2,100. And, they, at the point he testified, we were about halfway through roughly. The amount overturned was a lot lower. I mean, lot lower than normal, in terms of, the decision in favor to the taxpayer. The in favor decision to taxpayer increased, was higher this year, but we hadn't gone through everything. So what we could do is when we're through all 2,100, share the statistics with you in terms of where we ended up. And again, the team tries to be fair. I mean, they're not punitive. They want to be fair and just, and they base their decision on the facts.
No, that'd be great. One of the things that we hear quite often is no sense appeal because nothing's going to happen. So we want to be able to explain to people that that's not true.
It's not true.
The Building Board of Appeals are actually Board of Review for Real Property Tax Appeals, rather, does take this seriously. They do review each case independently and render a fair decision. And actually, you can win an appeal.
You definitely can, yeah.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Thank you. And,
Thank you.
and ma'am, you can answer the question if you want. It could be a lot of work. Just wondering if you're prepared to do that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, any other questions for Director Kano? We have Committee Vice Chair Wire.
Thank you, Chair. Just quickly, Director.
Director Kano?
So based off, just wanted to touch on the last kind of discussion point. You were saying that the number of appeals in favor of the taxpayer has increased, or?
Through the initial set of appeals closed.
Okay.
Yeah, but we're not completely through, and we can share statistics when we get through all of them.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's still, since the hearing, I don't know if the administrator has any updates, if the numbers shifted
We
at
can
all.
ask him. He's right behind
okay.
me. So, do you want to have him speak?
Just if he does, but if not, no worries. If
Okay.
you want to ask him, but if not, that's okay. And it could just be the, I guess, percentage-wise, if we know.
He said he doesn't have the information right now, but he can provide it. Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
mahalo. Mahalo, Chair.
Thank you very much. Okay, any questions for Director Kano? Okay, any other questions for the appointee? Okay, thank you very much. We will now proceed with remote testifiers. We don't have any registered remote testifiers, but is there anyone else who wishes to testify? I see Angela Melody Young wishing to testify.
Aloha, Chair, Vice Chair, and the council members. Angela Melody Young testifying on behalf of peers in support of the candidate nomination. So I don't personally know the candidate.
Angela? Sorry, can you, I think there might be something blocking your microphone. We cannot hear you clearly. Okay, yeah, try now.
Is it better?
Oh, yes, thank you. Okay, please proceed.
Okay. The keyboard was blocking. The keyboard was blocking. Okay. So, I don't know the candidate personally, but I'm testifying in her support because she's a really good candidate. I just want to bring to her.
So sorry, Angela, can I have you maybe hold your laptop up so that you're, okay, yeah, and then you can talk. Okay, sorry, ready? You can go now.
Okay. Starting over. So, testifying in support, I don't know the candidate personally, however, she sounded a good candidate, and I'd like to bring to her attention and the attention of the council, because some of the questions, the ROH, so section 8-12.3 on appeals, there are some things that the has to be shown for an appeal. So in the case of a real property tax appeal, no taxpayer shall be deemed aggrieved by an assessment, nor shall an assessment be lowered or an exemption allowed unless there is this shown. 1. Assessment of the property exceeds by more than 10% the market value of the property. Or 2. Lack of uniformity or inequality brought about by the illegality of the methods used or error in the application of the methods to the property involved. Or 3. Denial of an exemption to which the taxpayer is entitled, for which such person is qualified. Or 4. Illegality on any ground arising under the Constitution and laws of the United States or the laws of the state or the ordinance of the city. In addition to the ground of the illegality of the methods used and can be found.
Thank you for that review, Angela, and for sharing a bit about the Board of Review and how people can learn from errors on their application as well. So thank you for noting that as well. Okay, is there anyone else online who wishes to testify? Okay, there's also no registered in-person speakers. Was there anyone else who wishes to testify? And noting the testimony by Director Krucky. Thank you. Okay, seeing none, we are back in discussion. Members, any discussion on the appointee? Okay, thank you very much. Well, I look forward to meeting with you soon, Ms. Higa. The chair recommends that Resolution 23-148 be reported out for adoption. Any discussion? Any objections? Reservations? Hearing none, so ordered. Okay, thank you. Moving forward to Resolution 23-175. This authorizes a transfer not to exceed $696,991 from the provision for grants, partnerships, and security activity from the current expenses to the Department of Community Services Community-Based Development Activity current expenses for the fiscal year 2024 to meet the local match grant program needs of DCS. With us from the administration, we have Anton Krucky, Director of Department of Community Services. Excuse me.
Thank you, Chair. Again, Anton Krucky, Department of Community Services. This is the matching grants for the ESG program, and that first bucket is really for salaries, and then the larger bucket matches the ESG money that's for shelter operations and street outreach.
Okay, members, are there questions for Director Krucky on Resolution 23-175? Any questions? Would you be able to explain again where this funding is going to again? You said street shelter. Can you repeat that again?
Right, so there'll be three service providers that this will be going to shelter operations, Child and Family Services, Family Promise, and also a second one for Child and Family Services. And then for IHS, it's street outreach. And then the first bucket is for salaries to support those programs.
Okay, and so do we have the breakdown for each of the three service providers and those amounts?
For the first emergency shelter for Child and Family Services, it's $111,969. The Family Promise line is $132,754. The second Child and Family Services is $182,627, and the other program for Family Promise is $118,294. And then for street outreach for IHS is $99,073.
Okay, thank you. And I don't know if this is for you or for BFS, but how much of the requested transfer will be used for administrative costs?
$18,000 for fringe.
$18,000 for fringe, and this is going to be divvied up between the three service providers?
Yes.
Okay, so $6,000 each. $6,000 each for each service provider.
I believe it's proportional to the amount of money they're getting.
Okay, understood. Proportional to each amount of money, or to the money that they are getting. Okay, got it. Thank you. Members, any questions for Director Krucky on this transfer? Okay, thank you. Thank you for answering my questions, Director Krucky. Okay. We don't have any registered remote testifiers, but I do see Angela Melody Young raising her hand. Angela, I don't know if you have the meeting playing in the background, but can you lower that volume so we can hear just you? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. It's not playing.
Go ahead.
It's on the administrative support with any initiatives related to incidents. Of course, it happens.
Hey, Angela, I'm so sorry. We are unable to understand your speaker. I mean, your microphone.
Okay. Can I turn it off?
Okay, Angela, we do want to be able to have your testimony for the record. So can you try not block your microphone or the input for your volume? I mean, for your audio.
Okay. Is it okay now?
That's perfect. That's perfect. Stay like that and just go for it. Go for it.
Okay. So, testifying in support on behalf of peers, relating to the initiatives where the homelessness. You know, of course, we want to see the children get housing, and DTS got funding, as it was mentioned, from Partners in Care for the EFG, the Emergency Funding Grant, and it seems like there was support from Green, so we are also supporting.
Thank you. Okay, we don't have any, is there anyone else who wishes to testify online? Okay, seeing none, we don't have any registered in-person testifiers. Is there anyone else who wishes to testify on item number 2? Okay, seeing none, we are now in discussion. Any discussion? Okay, seeing none, the chair recommends that Resolution 23-175 be reported out for adoption. Any discussion? Any objections? Any reservations? Hearing none, so ordered. Moving forward, we have Resolution 23-166, which approves a one-time compromise of the real property taxes owed by Smith Baratania Bridge LP for the property located at 1170 Nu'uanu Avenue for the tax year beginning July 1, 2021, in the amount due $18,668.20, plus applicable penalties and interest, and for the tax year beginning July 1, 2022, in the amount due of $18,753.76, plus applicable penalties and interest, which sums represent the taxes due from the assessed value of the non-exempt commercial units. Members, we have a proposed hand-carried CD1 submitted by myself that makes the following amendments, and it is OCS 2023-0679/7/24/2023 at 10:37 a.m. So the CD1 revises the be it resolved clause to clarify the amounts compromised and the amounts due for tax years 2021 and 2022. It also makes miscellaneous technical and non-substantive amendments. With us from the City Administration for this item number 3 is Director Kawano from the Department of Budget and Fiscal Services. Hi, Director Kawano.
Good morning, Budget Chair. Andy Kawano, Director of Budget and Fiscal Services, for the record. I also see Vice Chair Kiaina online. Good morning. Yeah, with regard to the resolution, I want to thank Budget Chair for clarifying the amounts owed and the amounts to be invoiced. And this property is owned by the city, and most of it, except for the bottom floor, is affordable housing. And as a result, the units, the proportion of the units, which is by far the majority that are affordable housing, have can be exempt from assessment for real property taxes. And we have found that the records show that the current operator of the property would have qualified for the exemption had it turned everything in, had it filed the claim for exemption on a timely manner. And because our policy has been that if for the public benefit, we do a compromise to allow low-income housing to continue at such properties, we typically have moved forward to do that. And as a result, we're proposing through resolution to provide the tax compromise to the Smith Baratania property.
Thank you, Director Kawano. Members, are there any questions? Okay, we have Councilmember Kiaina.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Director Kawano, for your presentation. While I support this compromise, the situation being covered by this compromise is similar to the situation of numerous constituents that have contacted me because they obtained ownership of a property after the exemption and credit deadlines. These situations include new buyers, children who inherit their parents' home after a death, and even widows. What is the policy rationale for recommending a compromise in this case, but not in situations where a widow or a new buyer may also experience a hardship paying higher tax rates? In some situations, we're talking about a substantial difference in property taxes due, especially when the property may be bumped into the residential A category.
Well, I think with regard to these situations, and we've gotten compromised adopted in the past, we're dealing with numerous residents that require affordable housing, not just one. And I think with every individual taxpayer, each situation has to be looked at because we have other protections for lower income taxpayers, such as a low income tax credit that can be utilized for properties. And in cases where they get bumped into Res A, typically there probably is a situation where they did not overlook filing for their exemption, for a homeowner's exemption. And, we understand that those cases exist. And, we've been doing lots of outreach to various organizations to educate the public that, they have to ensure that when they have a change in status, they file for their homeowner's exemption on a timely manner.
Okay, so I just want to make sure I understand this. So there are going to be circumstances of individuals in similar circumstances where on a case-by-case basis, you may deem that they need a compromise, correct? I just want to make sure that individuals are being treated fairly versus affordable housing projects.
Since I've been director, we have not provided any compromises to individuals. It's always been in those situations where we have a housing project where you have hundreds of people that can be impacted. Should the property manager owner decide to not continue providing affordable housing. So we look at those facts specifically, and we haven't compromised situations where individuals have perhaps not filed, communicated change in status and have not filed for, a new home exemption.
Okay, I understand. So, I've asked this in previous years, but I need to ask it again. So do you think that we perhaps should revisit the manner of how we address individual circumstances and make them potentially eligible for compromise? Should we revisit that? We've talked about this in previous hearings.
Yeah, and I think, council members mentioned that there'll be another permitted interaction group. And I think one of the classifications of tax issues that we can look at is this one here. I don't think it's tax relief. I think what we should do is change the law, if you will, for homeowners exemption to provide more flexibility. And there may be other situations that we have to look at as well.
Okay, thank you so much for your clarification. I just want to, I support what you're doing here, and it just makes me reflect back on all of the individuals out there who also need to have a process where there's greater flexibility in your part and their appeal. So that's all. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Council Member.
Thank you, Council Vice Chair Kia-Aina. We also have a question from Committee Vice Chair Wire.
Thank you, Chair. And mahalo, Director. So just to kind of go off of Vice Chair's line of questioning, and so kind of, I guess, to come back to the property, because I fully support the resolution and the supporting affordable housing. I'm assuming, was it Smith Britannia's obligation under their lease of the city property or their management agreement to do the property tax filing? Is that your understanding?
Yeah, they were, change in transfer and ownership, change in property manager. They were supposed to, the new one, supposed to have filed timely for the exemption. They did not.
Okay. And based,
However, when the appraisers looked at the underlying records, everything was in place. They just had not filed, and
okay.
because so many people could be impacted,
Okay, I understand.
we've decided the right thing to do would be to grant the tax compromise.
Okay, meaning that they would have possibly tried to get out of the agreement?
Correct, because if the property manager, operator, owner/owner, et cetera, cannot make a go with the business, they decide to sell, there's a possibility that the new owner could turn more of the units to market, and a lot of people would lose their
I see.
their
Okay.
rental and be put on the street
So-
without a plan.
Okay, no, I appreciate that. So as a city-owned property, there's no obligation under the agreement that the manager has with the city to provide a certain number of affordable rentals? Or it sounds like maybe you're saying there's flexibility for them to change the agreement?
I'm sorry, council member, I don't understand your question.
I guess I'm just trying to wrap my mind around it to make sure I'm understanding, because it's a city-owned property, so I'd imagine there's some type of agreement, a contract, whether it's a lease or-
There's a lease,
Okay.
and that's why property taxes are levied. Yeah.
Okay, and then you're saying that under that agreement, that they could essentially stop providing the affordable units if they couldn't afford the property tax?
Correct,
Okay.
because there's a new manager, tenant, operator that would have been impacted, because I think the taxes that were due are significant,
I see.
compared to the taxes that are going to be billed for just the commercial units, which is a small part of the property. We're talking $18,000 to $19,000 a year as compared to hundreds of thousands of dollars per year.
Okay,
Yeah.
so would have just been, they would have had to breach the lease or the contract, or you're saying the terms of the contract would have allowed them to get out of it?
I'm saying that, yeah, they had everything in place to be able to file on a timely basis for the exemption for low-income housing, but they did not file. So our appraisers went back to verify that all of their documentation was in place. The new operator, if you will, property manager, just didn't file. It was an oversight. It was a mistake. It was unintentional, and as a result, we felt that it's fair to compromise in this case, considering the public benefit of many low-income renters that can be affected.
Okay, no, I appreciate that. Just wanted to make sure, because I think my assumption would have been that under the agreement they had with the city, they'd be obligated to comply with all the terms. And even though it doesn't look like they're a nonprofit under DCCA, I think there's still value in having private companies provide affordable housing. But just coming back to Councilmember Vice Chair's question about, single family homes, and you had mentioned the low-income tax credit. So at current time, is there a deadline for filing for that tax
There's
credit?
a deadline for that too.
Okay.
You're right. And the filing for the low-income tax credit is an annual filing. And the benefit of the credit is realized the following tax year, right? So if I file for low-income tax credit come this October 2nd, which is the due date,
Yeah.
October 2nd, 2023, if I qualify and let's say my credit is $1,000, I get benefit from the $1,000 on my bill July 2024.
Okay.
Yeah, next year.
Because I know BFS wasn't wanting to entertain discretion or increasing the amount that they have discretion over. Would you be more open to having discretion over applying the low-income tax credit if folks are found to be eligible? Similar to, the situations we discussed at previous hearing, right, where maybe you have a widow that's suddenly found to no longer have a home.
I think
exemption.
very different situation. The low-income tax credit is an annual credit, and the application is done annually. It's put out there. We've really expanded outreach and education. We've done, a ton of communication in the last 2 weeks. I don't think it would be fair to extend out, the time or go back retroactively, go back and adjust someone's taxes because they missed a deadline. There's enough information out there for the application, and it's an annual application as well.
Okay. Appreciate that. Mahalo. Mahalo, Chair.
Thank you. We have Council Chair Tommy Waters.
Thank you. Good morning again, Director. First, I'd like to start by saying I'm completely in support of the resolution, right? But my questions are focused more on what Vice Chair Kiaino is talking about. And that a large company, which I get it, again, I get the rationale why we're doing it, because a large amount of people are going to be affected, and perhaps this huge tax bill and interest payment would affect what the renters are charged, right? So we want to make sure that doesn't happen and keep these units affordable. And I imagine that's the reason why, or the rationale behind submitting this resolution. But every year we get complaints from constituents, as Vice Chair Kiaina pointed out, whether or not they're new home buyers or widows or widowers or people who just happen to miss the exemption filing deadline. And why won't we allow the same type of, or why doesn't the department make the same type of request to the City Council for individuals?
Because each individual situation can be very different, it would really tax our appraisers in our assessment division if they had to go back and retroactively research every individual situation. I feel that there's enough out there to educate the public with regard to the deadlines for applications, filing of claims, and so on for these various credits and exemptions. The taxpayers have to be responsible, personally responsible. We have, close to 280,000, I think, parcels that fall under residential or residential A. It'd be too much work to look at everyone's situation on a case-by-case basis. Our policy to look at these larger affordable rental units is different because we're impacting hundreds of people at one time, and we feel that it's the compromises that we're requesting for those types of situations are fair and has substantial public benefit.
In this case, for Smith Beretano Associates, they missed the filing deadline, right?
That's correct.
Okay, and similarly with individuals, oftentimes, if an individual missed the deadline, there's no appeal. You cannot appeal that. It's not an appealable issue, missing the deadline, right?
That's correct.
But in this case, where they missed the appeal, because there's it affects a lot of people, you're asking us to compromise.
The renters didn't miss the appeal. The property manager did.
Right.
It's not fair to those hundreds of renters.
But
It's
the
very
idea
different.
here is that they would have qualified had they made the timely
That's correct.
filing.
Yeah.
Okay, I mean, similarly with a lot of individuals, they would have qualified had they made like a widow whose spouse died, they would have qualified for the homeowner's exemption, but for the missing the deadline or not knowing that they should have filed an exemption, right?
And that's correct. And even my personal situations that I've shared with you,
Right.
I didn't, when I bought my home first time, I didn't file for homeowner's exemption, and I wasn't getting the exemption.
Right.
The broker informed me when I did my first refinancing. But I didn't know, and I think, and again, if we have to go back and retroactively look at records for every residential aid taxpayer to reassess, we're going to have to
Well, how about only the ones
multiply
where
our
people actually,
staffing.
how about the ones where people actually complain? Right? You said there's about 1,500 of them. Out of the 280 some odd properties that you discussed, 1,500, that doesn't seem overwhelming.
I don't think it's equitable to address only people that complain.
Oh, why not? I mean, if people would come to you and tell you, hey, look, my spouse died. Now I'm on a fixed income, I have Social Security. I don't know what I'm gonna have to do. How do I pay my property taxes because my spouse died and my spouse was the income earner perhaps? I mean, I'm just giving a worst case scenario, but that happens every year.
I understand.
But too bad for these people? Is that what Budget and Fiscal Services is
no, that's
saying
why I'm
as a
saying,
policy?
with all due respect, Chair, what I'm saying is when we do our, the second stand-up of the permitted action group, let's look at this and look at law and see if we can amend it and
Well, let's talk about that for a
put more
second.
flexibility to
One
be
of the
fair.
things you testified to that you need to change the law and provide more flexibility. You know very well, I introduced Bill 9, 2023, that gave you the flexibility, that raises the bound from 500 to 10,000, where you have the flexibility to take these situations into account and then perhaps provide some relief. And you testified against it.
Yes, I did.
And one of the things I recall you saying is that, we can work together to come up with a solution. But I've been trying and trying to come up with solutions. I need you guys who work in the department every single day come up with a solution, right? Because we're going to be doing this every year. I've been here for 4 years now, and every year we have the same exact discussion. And I try and I come up with ideas, and you guys just come in and shoot it down. So what do you suggest we do to help individuals who are similarly situated, whose taxes are now tripled because they missed the deadline? How do we solve that problem?
Well, let's look at the laws we have in place with regard to the homeowner's exemption and see if we can make it more flexible. I don't think it makes sense for us to review, ask for documentation for every complaint that we get when we have instructions, we do outreach, we put on educational programs, and so on and so forth. I think people have to be personally responsible.
Well, I think we can make the form a lot more clear. Interestingly and coincidentally, I got a complaint yesterday about a homeowner who now is residential A, and the homeowner didn't know about this. And I'm looking at the form that the homeowner sent me, and it says here 2023 property class, and it is residential A. But it doesn't say the actual tax, right? It says the value of the home and that it's residential A. Well, this person had a homeowner's exemption, and with 2 homes on the property with 1 TMK, and they subdivided it, sold the other house, and the first house, I guess it's a new TMK, so that put them into a residential A category. But, I mean, in the form itself, couldn't we make the residential A part in red, and then put the actual tax? Because I think if the homeowner saw the tax go up, the actual tax from like 5,000 to 20,000, something like that, I'm just rounding numbers. Had we put that on the form, I think the red lights would have gone on and said, oh no, what is this? Residential A. Some people don't even know what residential A is. Yeah? I mean, to me, that's an easy one, right? We got to be even more clear on our forms. Letting people know. I mean, is it too much to ask if someone goes from residential to residential A, that we send them a special letter? Hey, just informing you, your taxes are gonna go up substantially. if you qualify for homeowners exemption, you should. Can we do that?
We can look at options and then share, what's available through the system. We're not going to do it manually. The other option is to include a flyer with the notice of assessment and with the flyer explaining what the rate differentials are for residential versus residential A, and so on and so forth. So we could do that, put a flyer in with the notice, and I think the cost will be nominal for that.
That would be terrific. Last question. On paragraph 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, whereas ROH section 8-1.3 subsection 12 states that the Director of Budget and Fiscal Services may recommend that the City Council approve a compromise. Is it necessary for you as the Budget and Fiscal Services Director make the recommendation to the Council, or can the Council initiate these types of resolutions on our own?
I just follow the law. So the law says I do that, so I do it.
Okay.
Let me ask my administrator behind me if it's ever come up the other way. Yep.
Because while you're coming up to the microphone, the idea here, fellow council members, is that you collect all the complaints that you all have in your district, and we put it all together in one resolution, and we do the exact same thing that Smith Beretania Associates are doing.
Hi, good morning, Budget Chair, Vice Chair, Council Chair, and other council members. Stephen Dakar, Real Property Assessment Administrator. Yes, we've had historically other council members, or we've had council members introduce resolutions requesting for a compromise, urging Budget and Fiscal Service to grant such compromises.
Okay, terrific. Thank you so much. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Before I would like to move on, I would like to welcome our committee member, Calvin Singh. Okay, moving forward, we have Council Vice Chair Kia Aina.
Thank you, Chair. I wanted to clarify some of my statements in light of the discussion between Chair Waters and the Director. So Director Kawano, I do understand what you're saying with regard to holding everyone accountable, including individuals, especially in case of individual compromises. But where I would like to see some flexibility would be that in certain circumstances where individuals have a justified reason for missing a deadline, whether it be for the tax credit or for the home exemption, that I want greater flexibility on your part to be able to give it to them. They will not having to pay, the full price for real property taxes when for circumstances that were unforeseen, they find themselves without the home exemption. And again, that would be on a case-by-case basis. So that's where I'm coming from. I just want to make sure that you understood that I understand about compromises and how you can't just be giving everybody compromises no matter how their circumstances are. If it's because that would be a form of tax relief. So that's all. I just wanted to make sure you understood, and I will be pursuing that. And I appreciate you mentioning the upcoming permitted interaction group, and we'll have further dialogue on that front. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Committee Vice Chair Wire.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, and also just a comment that I think our entire discussion fits the definition of equity, right? Because you brought up equity and fairness. And so I do think that if we look at, designing policies that are mindful of how individuals are specifically situated and having that empathy is equitable, right? That's the definition, is not just an equal application. And so, because I definitely know we can't just tell, an 80-year-old widow that lost her homeowner exemption, we have to hold you accountable, right? And so understand the nuance and the struggle, but I know I've said it before, but I think the reason we have this conversation is because, at least for me, it's brainstorming what can we do, and I think that's a shared mentality to get input, and so it's something that's workable for BFS, but also meets the needs of the community. So I hope that makes sense. Mahalo.
Thank you. Okay, Chair has a few questions just for the Budget and Fiscal Services Director. So what portion of the property is non-exempt commercial, and how is the real property tax calculated for that portion?
I think what I'll do is I'll ask Administrator Takara to answer that question. It's very technical. The commercial valuation process can be much more complex than a residential valuation. So I'll ask Administrator to respond to your question.
Okay, and if it also needs to be done in written response, if that helps as well.
I'm sorry, I was preoccupied. Can you?
Okay, all right. Thank you, Administrator Takara. My question is, what portion of the property is non-exempt commercial, and how is the real property tax calculated for each, or for that portion?
Oh, we're talking about the subject property.
The subject property, yeah.
So the first floor, the ground floor, has commercial tenants. I believe there's a post office, there's a restaurant, and some other commercial activity there. So basically, it's a portion of the valuation, the overall valuation, because it can be only class and valued the market value of the property. So it's a percentage. I think I forget what the percentage amount, but it's like 3 or 4 or 5%, which results in the valuation of the 21 and 22. Okay. We're still calculating the 23 values.
Okay, and my follow-up question is relating to if the commercial property remains a property owner for a particular time being, do they still have to file their exemption annually? No,
it's a one-time filing for the giving of regulatory agreement and the lease period.
Understood, thank you. Members, any questions for BFS? Okay. Members, I do want to bring up, we have Makani Maeva here, who is under contract and with, if you would like to, the local partner for the Smith-Beretania Bridge LP. Oh, press on off the button.
Good morning, Chair, members of the committee, and County Council. I am Makani Maeva. I'm the president of AHE Group. We are under contract with Smith-Beretania Bridge Partners to acquire this asset. We would apply for tax-exempt bonds. In fact, we already have applied, and we would use low-income housing tax credits to revitalize and preserve the project, extending the affordability and extending the housing assistance payments contract. We are an experienced affordable housing developer, and with regard to the real property taxes on this asset, it has always, since construction, been exempt from real property taxes. As a result of a recent management agent transfer, I think the new management agent failed to file on time, and then the notices were sent to an old address. I just want to reinforce with you that none of the residents were affected in any way. We continued to operate the property as affordable housing during this entire issue and with all the questions. We appreciate the assistance of Budget and Fiscal Services and their analysis and all of the work that they do. I do note that the process for obtaining the annual real property tax exemption here in the City and County of Honolulu differs from the processes in other municipalities and counties throughout the state. And typically, we provide evidence of our regulatory agreement, and then we are exempt from real property tax and don't go through the administrative filing each year. But here, and I apologize if the policy has changed. I don't think I'm misspeaking, but here, in order to receive the annual real property tax exemption, notwithstanding the fact that we have a filed regulatory agreement, we still file the form, and then we go to the state and we ask the state to I think I'm going to be corrected here, which is great because that means that it's improved. But we've had to have the state file a written letter individually on behalf of each property, and then we use that to substantiate our exemption. But I think I'm going to be corrected in that it's been changed. So I apologize. Do you want to speak?
I'll call him up after, but right now you have the floor, and we'll have questions directed to you before we call up Administrator Takara, if that's okay.
Okay, I'm sorry. I hope that I'm going to be corrected because I felt like that was unnecessary work that that the staff doesn't really need to do. In fact, we have a regulatory agreement, which is our long-term commitment. It runs with the land, and it's a transfer that happened with this asset, which triggered this real property tax exemption falling off. So it was an exemption that existed, it fell away, and then it was, and we had to come back to reinstate the exemption. So I thank you for your support and available to answer any questions that you might have.
Okay, members, any questions for Ms. Maeva? Okay, we have Council Chair Waters.
Thank you so much. No questions, but thank you for the good work that you do dealing with affordable housing. I just wanted to point out, and sorry, you got caught up in a different discussion that's somewhat related, but just pointing out that 163 of the 164 units are designated for Section 8 rental units. So it's worthwhile making sure that this remains doing the good work that they do. So thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Ms. Maeva, I have a question. From your perspective and your years of working with the city on projects, do you have any other further insight that you could provide to, I guess, help, make it more efficient, the administrative issues that could be avoided in the future?
I mean, I think for me, it's really a fact that we file a regulatory agreement and we have a long-term commitment to affordable housing, as you know. So if anything we can do to make that process go smoother, eliminating sort of the annual filing, it's just another administrative task, and it's feels a bit punitive. So, simplifying those processes really are helpful to us in maintaining our affordable housing, making sure there's not this sort of inadvertent, foot fault, which triggers a very large real property tax issue. So.
Thank you. I also want to note there have been discussions relating to if a compromise were to not happen and real property taxes would remain for the property or the commercial property, that the affordable housing units may turn to market. Do you have any comment about that?
That's actually, that's not what would happen. We have a long-term commitment to affordable housing, and we continue to operate it as such. We have a regulatory agreement that runs with the land. We have a Section 8 contract that says we will rent these units to residents, and we will charge them rent that is only 30% of their median income. What in fact will happen is our ability, so our lenders and investors who are financing these projects now will say that your operating expenses are correspondingly higher. We will reduce the amount of available debt that we can take out on this transaction, and then we will likely have a gap. That gap will have to be filled in some way. We would apply for soft financing, maybe from the city. So then we would apply for the city to pay a bill to the city. We would apply potentially to the state. We would delay, I would assume, delay the capacity. We're already, squeezed right now with interest rate increases. So, these types of real property tax exemptions, the help that you give any particular affordable housing project is critical to making it work. It is not just the $300,000 or $400,000 annually, but it's what that means in terms of the amount of commercial debt that we can put on this property. So it's really important, and it's a fundamental way of making sure that we can finance affordable housing.
Thank you, Ms. Maeva. Are there any questions for Ms. Maeva? Okay, we have committee member Say.
Mr. Takara, I would say the word I would like to use, in regards to the Smith-Baratania Bridge LP, are they, at this point in time, I would consider at fault in not paying their taxes or applying for the exemption? Meaning, do we have to go through this rather than going through the Tax Appeals Board? Just the
Great,
administrative
great
process.
question. Yeah, great question. I believe they may have filed an appeal, but they were untimely filed, so they missed the deadline. But as far as fault and whatnot, as she mentioned, there's a lot of things going on, and there's a lot of assumptions, and a lot of people, as individuals, they may have overlooked it and they filed late. But again, I think Director Kawano kind of explained the situation. But in cases where if it could have been addressed during the appeal process, yes, it could have been. And can I interject? I kind of want to apologize. She's correct, and that's why I thank you for the opportunity. The initial is a one-time filing, but there is an annual certification to assure that the project is still renting in accordance to the agreement of the regulatory agreement. So that's the requirement of the annual filing. So there's a certification by the government agency to ensure that they're complying with the agreement. Hopefully that, so I stand corrected that I did mention that it's a one-time filing, the initial filing, but she's correct as well that there's an annual certification that goes out. It's a one-pager that basically the government agency or the overseeing agency certifies that they are still in compliance with the rent roll and whatnot, or they're in compliance with the agreement in the regulatory agreement.
Thank you.
Yes.
Yes, Member Singh.
Mr. Takara, the other question I posed to you this morning is simply put, as we move forward into the out years whereby we're looking at a lot of affordable housing, maybe at 80 AMI and below, but what bothers me is that do you folks have the capability of assessing these type of projects whereby on the ground level they have commercial activities? I don't know, maybe Ms. Maya.
Yeah, I think if I understood, I'm sorry, is it for?
I think it's, in this circumstance, very straightforward. The square footage that is commercial, which is, I'm going to say, 3,000 square feet of the 40,000 square feet, or it's something relatively small. It's really just sort of that little retail space where the dim sum restaurant is and the post office, and now it's church, that little bit. So we pay commercial real property tax with regard to that component, and the balance of the building is exempt. So it's a percentage application. The affordable housing with the regulatory agreement is exempt as to 100% except for an administrative fee, and then it's the standard charge for the commercial.
So can I just follow up with your train of thought? And at this point in time, for all HUD projects that are affordable, they're exempt. Like some of these developers come in and say, oh, we got the low-income housing tax credit.
Yes.
That's federal, right?
It's a federal program, but you're still entitled under the City and County of Honolulu to file an exemption form. So those same projects will come through, file the exemption form initially, and then follow up annually to confirm that they are continuing with their regulatory agreement. And then the government agency that enforces the affordable housing obligations is obligated to confirm, generally, this case, it'll be the city, but generally it's the state. And so then the state gives us a letter to give to the city to receive our real property tax exemption on an annual basis.
And thank you very much. So that particular state agency is who?
Typically, it's Hawaii Housing Finance and Development Corporation. It can also be Hawaii Community Development Authority, HCDA. So HHFDC or HCDA are typically, I think it can, in some cases, it's DHHL, or Hawaii Public Housing Authority. So any of those governmental agencies which are involved in the production of affordable housing, I think, execute these forms to give to the city.
Okay, and Mr. Takara, who within your division does that enforcement?
Yeah, our appraisers ensure that they're in compliance, or the claimant, in this case, would be checks and balances every year, right? The initial, as far as qualification, but the continuance is done by the annual certification submitted each year.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. We have Committee Vice Chair Wire.
Mahalo, Chair. And actually, I like this format. That's why I missed the committee room, where you had the tables and everyone could sit around it. So appreciate Administrator and Makani. So the regulatory agreement is 20 years, or how long is the agreement?
I believe the regulatory agreement remaining on this parcel is 43 years.
Okay.
And it would be, we'll ask to get it extended. So under the low-income housing tax credit program, we'll commit to 61 years. And then under your lease, when we're before you for a potential lease extension, that would be the full 75 years. So it's a long look at and commitment to affordability.
I appreciate that. Does BFS know whose inventory, or it said it was city-owned, so is it in a particular department's inventory? Yeah.
So I don't know what department it's under right now. I'll have to research that.
Okay.
But there's a lease. The lease creates the taxability of that property.
Okay, Ms.
Yeah.
Maiva, is there a particular department you work with relating to this lease?
Yes, this is land leased through the Department of Community Services.
Okay.
Yeah.
Did they do any type of monitoring or engagement?
We are the ever-regulated group. So yes, the answer is yes. In addition to them, HUD does their annual and continued check. HUD has a third party. When we use this, when we execute a tax-exempt bond and tax credit project, then the investor will be involved, as will the HHFDC, and then I sign a personal guarantee, of course, that all of the residents who are occupying those units are in fact qualified under the affordability guidelines. We also have a management company that does an annual recertification of their income, and this digs right down to W-2s and bank statements and all of that to ascertain and confirm the ongoing affordability for each and every resident there. So
Okay.
we've got belts, suspenders, we got it all.
Okay, appreciate that.
Yeah.
Because I'm wondering if BFS could contemplate that if, for example, it fell out of affordable housing, the city would be in violation as well. And so I'm wondering if just checking with DCS versus doing an annual, well, if we're brainstorming like how to simplify the process and not put more certification requirements on a housing provider when there's already a development or regulatory agreement, if that's something we could consider. Or
So I've read a few of the regulatory agreements. The annual certification process is a requirement in that agreement.
yeah, but
Yeah,
again, that's
so-
drafted by the city, so that's, I'm just curious.
So you have to realize that it was put in there for a reason. HUD requires it. And if a project, for instance, uses LIHTC monies, there's a period of time that you have to do it for Treasury, U.S. Treasury as well. So
Okay.
it's put in there for a reason, and it helps the appraisers verify annually that the affordability requirements are being met, per the regulatory agreement. So I know that it's checks and balances, but there's reasons why those annual certifications were put in place,
Okay, appreciate that.
first time, yeah.
Thank you. Do you have any feedback on that or thoughts, Ms. Maeva?
Anything we can do to streamline the process, we're happy to work with your department and provide information about what other counties faced with similar regulatory limitations have done. So I'm happy to work with you. I think it would help me, help you. It would help us all to sort of make the process work. And obviously we are constrained by the federal guidelines or investor guidelines or those types of things. But I think there's probably a way.
Okay, well,
Yeah.
Are you, Director, you're open to at least reviewing?
Oh, yeah, I mean, we're open to make things more efficient, but we have to also comply with law. So that's,
Of course. No, of course.
we have to do that. Yeah.
Appreciate that sentiment. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. And members, when you are addressing for each member so that people who are listening online or on Olelo, they can hear who you're addressing. So before you ask the question, can you ask the specific person by name first? Thank you. Okay, members, any other questions during this discussion? Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much. Moving forward to testimony, we do not have any registered remote testifiers, but I do see Angela Melody Young's willing to testify. Please proceed.
Aloha, Chair, Vice Chair, and the City Council, council members. Angela Melody Young, testifying on behalf of CARES in strong support. So the director of the budget, it's been amazing, saying good things about the city's budget process and real property tax, and about the real property tax assessment process on the Star Advertiser Spotlight team media platform. And I also personally support a lot of Chair Waters' bills and resolutions. I'm always here supporting and defending the city's work. There's been so much protests and not a lot of people defending the city's work here on this public platform. So let's be honest, a lot of us don't know what the laws are saying. So, we're talking about this specific situation where the manager missed the appeal. The manager missed the appeal, but it's not fair to the renters because the renters could have qualified. I think there can be balance achieved of putting responsibility on the renters, but also creating equity. And can a second appeal be granted here? If we look at the law, because the law provides guidance and legally sound parameters, what does it say about second appeals? Section 8-12.4, there are parameters for second appeals. In every case in which a taxpayer appeals a real property tax assessment to a tax appeal court and there is pending an appeal of the assessment, the taxpayer shall not be required to file a notice of the second appeal. So there are requirements and provisions.
Thank you, Angela.
Okay, yeah.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. I would also like to welcome Councilmember Okimoto to the committee. Okay, is there anyone else who wishes to testify online? Seeing none, we are now open. There are no registered in-person testifiers, but is there anyone else who wishes to testify in person? Seeing none, we are now back in discussion. Members, any discussion on this? Okay, and thank you very much, members, for a great discussion that we had in general, but also relating to Resolution 23-166. Members, the chair recommends that Resolution 23-166 be amended to the hand-carried CD1, which was posted. Any discussion? Any objections? Any reservations? The resolution has been amended to a CD1. The chair then recommends that Resolution 23-166 CD1 be reported out for adoption. Any discussion? Any objections? Okay, any reservations? Hearing none, so ordered. Moving forward to agenda item number 4, we have Resolution 23-169, which authorizes the Director of Budget and Fiscal Services to issue and sell not to exceed $225 million principal amount of wastewater system revenue bonds, Senior Series 2023, and related matters. From the City Administration, we have the Department of Budget and Fiscal Services Director, Director Kawano.
For the record, Andy Kawano again, Director of Budget and Fiscal Services. Thank you, council members, for hearing and discussing this resolution. We needed so that BFS and I are able to issue revenue bonds to help finance capital improvements for our wastewater facilities. Thank you very much.
Members, are there any questions for Director Kawano? We have committee members say.
Mr. Kawano, just the definition of a senior series of bonds, revenue bonds.
I think the senior classification was created many years ago because we had junior level bonds, which are being phased out. There's just a small amount right now. So essentially they're revenue bonds. And the repayment of the bonds are secured by the net revenues of the wastewater facility of the city.
Okay. Last week, we were given the opportunity of hearing from Director Babcock, who made a presentation on our sewer system hookup on the Eva Plains. And that particular cost was about $50 million. Which affected 957 private landowners who had cesspools. My question was that, will this particular revenue bonds be used to finance that $50 million in hooking up those 957 homeowners who are on cesspool? So I'm just trying to see, I'm just thinking about, if we're floating these bonds, I'm more concerned about 5 years out when we got to do phase 2 of Sand Island sewage treatment plant. That's another 1.5 or 2 billion in financing that we need. So my thought is that, are we not trying to save as much as we can, or are we floating bonds and saving the revenue side, whereby, I saw my bill the other day, just for the flat fee of sewage fee was $77.50. Was more than my water bill. But I just bring this up because I am concerned 5 years from now, stating for the record that the general public realize that we'll be coming back to ask for an increase in the sewer rates. So are we saving some money in anticipation of phase 2, or are we just going through the regular process? Because this 50 million that they talked about last week by Mr. Babcock is not supplanting our current capital improvement projects that you folks, they have been doing throughout the county of Oahu. The main sewer lines, et cetera, et cetera. So I just bring this up because, yeah, 225 is a lot as far as revenue bonds, but if it's going to be utilized for projects, I don't see anything wrong with it, but interest rates are high too.
Yes, good points, Councilmember Say. So the current issuance that we're talking about in 2023 will be used to help to finance the capital projects that are in the current appropriation that we just approved. So the department looks at their bond cash on hand, what they've saved, what they didn't have to spend. They look at what they have on hand. They have a significant, very complicated 20-year capital projects projection, and they look at what they need to finance, what they need to expend for capital improvement projects for the upcoming year. And that's what it's based on. They do realize that interest rates are higher. So to the extent that they can manage their project base such that they can push some of the costs out in the future when rates become lower, they'll do that. But it's hard to predict what's going to happen, 2 years out, 3 years out, 4 years out in terms of the credit market. So they're diligent in terms of, the amount of bonds, revenue bonds that they issue, and how they expend the monies year to year.
Okay, the next question, Madam Chair, may I continue? It's just the question of the revenue bonds for the sewer treatment that we have. Is there a ceiling for these revenue bonds?
There are ratios that have to be calculated to ensure that, the ratios are not exceeded. So there are ceilings, and the ratios are moving, so, it's not a fixed amount. So every year, as a part of the selling process, the underwriters work with the E&B administrative staff to ensure that they're within their bond ratios. So that they can issue the bonds in accordance with the covenants they have to comply with.
Okay, and one final thought. As we float these revenue bonds, is it a 30-year note or rev bond? So how much bonds did we retire for the last fiscal year from 30 years ago to today?
I don't have that off of the top of my head.
Okay, no problem. Just that as you retire the bonds of 30 years ago, you can increase your spending ceiling again, right? That's the way I see it, because you're lowering it and then you're adding in now some more to get to that point. But
so I can add, council members, so we have a more manageable debt service level year to year. The bonds go out 30 years, but they won't be all due in year 30. They're due on a serial basis. So, generally every 5 years, a chunk of the bonds mature. In that way, the debt service can be leveled out over time. So we don't have, large swings, increases, decreases year to year, which can be hard to budget.
Thank you. Members, any other questions? Okay, Chair has a question relating to just what is the anticipated annual debt service on these bonds?
Oh, I don't have our book. We have a booklet with a projection. I don't know off the top of my head.
Will rates be affected due to the debt service?
The rates are locked in. You know, we don't issue variable rate bonds. So once the rates are set, at the time we go to market, they're fixed over the term of the bonds.
Okay. Would you be able to explain how the redemption price of Series 2023 bonds, how did they get to the no greater than 103%?
Oh, what? I'm sorry. What is
More than, how did they get to the percentage of no more than 103% of the principal amount of the Series 2023 bonds to be redeemed? That's stated in the resolution on page 5, top of page 5.
Series.
It says that redemption price, or redemption prices, if any, and subject to Article 5, et cetera, that the redemption price of Series 2023 bonds at the election or direction of the City and County of Honolulu, or City and County, shall not be greater than 103% of the principal amount of the Series 2023 bonds to be redeemed, plus accrued interest thereon to the date of redemption.
What page are you reading? I'm sorry.
Page 5.
Sorry, Budget Chair. So page 5.
Top of page 5, section M, where it talks about the redemption price. I was just wondering how we got to such a percentage of 103 plus the accrued interest thereon to the date of redemption.
Okay, so that situation occurs if any of these bonds are called in the future, and typically they get called 10 years after issuance. You know, that's a rule of thumb. I think the redemption price stated at 103% is an industry norm that is used by underwriters, and it's customary industry practice. So if they cannot sell with, you know, at or below that premium amount, the redemption won't happen.
So those are unsold tax-exempt bonds. They're just unsold bonds.
That happens if they decide to call or redeem the bonds. It may not happen at all.
Understood.
Yeah, it gets determined at the time they get closer to the call date for the bonds.
I understand. Okay, thank you. Members, any other questions? Okay, thank you, Director. Okay, moving forward to testimony. We don't have any registered remote testifiers, and we don't have any in-person remote registered testifiers. Is there anyone else who wishes to testify? Okay, seeing none, members, we are still in discussion relating to these bond series, Resolution 23-169. Seeing none, okay, members, we are back in discussion. Oh, no, I already did discussion, excuse me. The Chair recommends that Resolution 23-169 be reported out for adoption. Any discussion? Any objections? Any reservations? Hearing none, so ordered. Next, we are moving to agenda item number 5, which is Bill 42, providing property tax relief to certain homeowners. We have a proposed posted CD1 OCS 2023-0646/7/17/2023 at 3:29 p.m. submitted by myself. And for your information, the amendments are listed on the agenda. With us from the City Administration, we have Director Kawano.
Andy Kawano, Director of Budget and Fiscal Services, for the record.
Do you have anything to state about Bill 42?
with regard to Bill 42 that we're discussing today in public hearing, we are, so the administration and Budget and Fiscal Services, we're concerned about a valuation cap. We say in the findings and purpose for the bill that, we want to ensure that we assess properties based on market valuations or the fair value of all taxable real property to be determined and annually assessed by market data and cost approaches to value using appropriate systematic methods suitable for mass valuation. We also say that, in the ordinance that so selected and applied as far as possible following uniform and equalized assessments throughout the county. We believe that if a valuation cap of any amount is put into place, you really lose the equity, uniform, and equalized assessments throughout the county. So, our recommendation would be not to do it and to look at other ways to provide relief, as we've been discussing, when relief is necessary.
Okay, thank you. Members, any questions for Director Kawano on this first reading bill? We have Council Chair Waters.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to point out that this is my bill, by the way, and real property valuations increased substantially from 2022 to 2023. In some cases, tens of thousands of dollars, and I think in Councilmember Wyer's district, perhaps even up to 20% of an increase. Last year, in order to make up for that, the administration introduced and we approved Bill 14, giving a one-time $350 tax credit. Bill 37 and Bill 40 increasing the homeowner's exemption in order to give some relief to taxpayers. The thought here is if we limit it at 8%, the county can make enough revenue to pay its bills, but also it would be fair to the taxpayer to know that they would be limited to only 8%. So that's the idea, and I was hoping for a robust discussion regarding that because 8% can be either higher or lower, depending on what the department says. I absolutely understand that the county has to pay collective bargaining and other costs related to keeping the city running. I understand your concern that perhaps if we limit it to 8%, that the county may not have enough money to pay its bills. But perhaps that could keep all of us in check, right? To not spend over 8% annually. Just wondering what your thoughts are in relation to Bill 14 and how it relates to this 8% cap. I mean, you agree with me that the reason why we did Bill 14 was people's property taxes went up quite a bit last year, and we wanted to make sure people could pay their bills. But thank you. Your comments would be greatly appreciated.
Thank you, Chair Waters. Thank you for your comments. Good points. Yeah, I do agree that 8% is not an unreasonable cap, but there are situations where you have geographical areas where there could be a lot of activity, and it has happened in time, whereby property values for that area goes up. And if we comply with ordinance currently, we're supposed to do the valuation based on market data and costs. And to me, it makes more sense to let the modeling and methodology flow to the right assessment levels versus restricting the assessment if it exceeds a certain level, like 8%, an increase of 8% over the prior year assessment for that same property. I believe that if you have regions where appraisals actually are higher than 8%, let's say it's 10 or 11 or 12, those properties should be valued higher at 10, 11, or 12%. On the flip side, where you have geographical areas, neighborhoods where the valuations are depressed to like 3%, 4%, or 5%, they should be valued at 3, 4, or 5%. So I believe in letting the market determine. We have objective data that we're using for the valuations. So let the market data determine what the valuations are. And if there are periods of time like we experienced after the notice of assessment in December 2022, where we have a situation where because of low inventory of homes, low interest rates at the time, interest rates aren't low anymore, pent-up demand, when you have situations where everything falls the same way, resulting in, too much of an increase, we have tools to address that. We can make the adjustment working together. So I would prefer to keep the methodology as currently is, and not put a valuation cap over it.
Is it safe to say that if your property value goes up by 8%, your property tax, the amount that you actually pay, also goes up by 8%?
That's correct.
And of course, conversely, if your property value goes up 20%, then your bill goes up 20%, right?
That's correct.
And I guess the idea is everybody knows that the cost of living in Honolulu is very high, and we're just trying to find different ways that we can save money or reduce people's obligations. And that's the real idea here. As you're pointing out, though, you're saying there are other tools that you would prefer that we use, like perhaps Bill 14, where we could give a one-time tax credit.
Correct. There's Bill 14. Council members also have the capability to adjust rates, because we, as administration, propose the rates. Council members review, approve, and adopt the rates. So you could also change the rates in time of need.
I see.
To equalize, not equalize, but to moderate the amount of tax due.
Resolution 23-33, where we set the rates, actually, we only modified the residential A category this year. But is that what you're suggesting, that you'd prefer us modify the rates rather than putting a cap on the valuations?
That's correct. Our feeling is that the valuation methodology should be kept pure as it currently is. And, we have other tools to moderate the actual tax.
Okay.
At the time the billing is done.
Going slightly off topic, but again, the valuation of the property is determined by recent real property sales in the same vicinity as your home, right?
Yes.
And if the valuation, the homeowner believes that the valuation is too high, they can actually appeal that valuation, right?
That is correct. Okay. There is a 10% criteria, though, if I recall right, in the law.
So if the property is valued 10% higher than it was in the previous year, you can appeal. But if not, I guess that's partly why I came up with the 8% cap. It's under that 10% threshold. Okay, thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Chair Rogers actually asked a lot of my questions. Okay, we have Committee Chair, Vice Chair Wire.
Thank you, Chair. Mahalo, Director. I just wanted to clarify. So when you say let the market decide, you're talking about the methodology or just the values of the homes?
Yeah, the assessed valuation is an outcome of the methodology, of the mass appraisal methodology used by the real property appraisers. And they've been using the same methodology for decades. So nothing has changed. So yeah, correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
But, from our discussions before, you'd agree that the recent year and the increases we saw was alarming.
Yes, as I mentioned, the stars all aligned the same way, and everything resulted in driving prices up.
Okay,
Yeah.
I appreciate that. And I know you mentioned the tools, so you're talking about the rates. Are there other tools you envision? I know that you're doing an analysis.
Yes, as Chair Waters mentioned, we can look at one-time credits, so not ongoing credits, but one-time credits like we did in Bill 14, 2023. Council members review, approve, and adopt the tax rates, so tax rates can be adjusted. So, we feel, especially within BFS, that if we because we've stuck with the methodology, we've supported it, we've kept true to it for decades. We should continue to do that, and use the other tools at our disposal to moderate things if needed. When and if needed.
I'm just wondering because I wanted to know if any of those tools involve changing the direction or the path that we're on.
I'm sorry, Councilmember War, can you repeat your question, please?
Do any of those tools include changing the direction or the path that we're on? Because I do appreciate the tools you're mentioning that can help adjust as we see these dramatic increases. But, I'm just curious because I know that a 20, 30, 40% increase isn't sustainable.
Yeah, and we can do that. But keep in mind that when you have those kinds of increases, there's probably a reason, right? There's a lot of sales activity in that geographical area happening, and that sales activity is verifiable. There's documentation for it. There's support. It's accessible, and that's why valuation and market data makes a lot of sense.
I appreciate that. Are there any tools then that BFS has been looking at that could, help adjust that sales direction, right? I think we know that we see a lot of outside investment. We see a lot of.
Well, I think the market currently is making an adjustment, right? I really believe we're going to level off, in terms of the assessed valuations this coming year. Higher mortgage interest rates, right? Mortgage interest rates are at, I think, above 7% now. There's other factors, right? Inflationary concerns still, although inflation is down, everything's still expensive. So people have to make ends meet, right? Beyond just shelter. So they can't spend as much, in terms of home acquisition. So therefore, I do see a leveling off. So there is an adjustment happening as we speak. The assessed valuations should not be as high this coming year as they were in the last 2 years. I don't have a crystal ball, but I think that's where we're headed.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Council Vice Chair Kia Aina.
Thank you, Chair. I thought while we are considering this bill relating to real property taxes, and there are several others on the agenda today, I did want to comment a little about how during the first permitted interaction group on real property taxes, we foresaw the need for a follow-up permitted interaction group to deal with other measures apart from Bills 37 and 40, which was recently enacted into law. And so I'm a little discomforted by having all of the dialogues on these bills and us contemplating movement on them, because I think we all agree that we need to look at things comprehensively. And so I just think we need to consider deferring all RPT bills until we kickstart a new permitted interaction group. Second, I think that if council members have other thoughts, that we may want to set a deadline certain so that we will introduce our bills and all of them can be considered for the next permitted interaction group. And of course, the permitted interaction group can have the authority to create new legislation from the discussions that are held. I just wanted to throw that out right now because I'm feeling that we are looking at all of these complex real property tax measures, some which will clearly have financial implications. And I don't know how this is going to reconcile with our stated objective from the first permitted interaction group to have a follow-up. And so I just wanted to throw that out to the members.
Thank you. Okay, members, any other discussion and questions for Budget and Fiscal Services? Okay, okay.
No more
Council Chair Watt.
questions at this time, but perhaps during the discussion phase, just a few more comments.
Sure thing. Okay, Chair has a question relating for some of the tools. Would increasing the real property tax exemption be another tool, viable alternative, or viable tool for valuation caps?
It's a possibility, yes. And we actually have one of the, I guess, Bill 40 covers that in terms of, let's see, do I have the right one? Oh, Bill 34 covers an increase to the homeowner's exemption. And, you know, I really appreciate Vice Chair Kiana's comments because I think we have to look at all of these different bills that are looking at amending or changing our tax structure, our tax exemptions, tax rates, tax credits. We have to look at them comprehensively because I do agree there's a fiscal impact, and we sort of have to, we're going to have to tally the impact and determine what we can afford, considering everything that's going to come up next year in FY25.
Okay, thank you. Members, any other questions and or for Budget and Fiscal Services? Okay, we will now move on to testifiers. We don't have any registered remote testifiers, but is there anyone else who wishes to testify online? Seeing none, we don't have any registered in-person testifiers. Is there anyone who wishes to testify in person? Okay, members, we're back in discussion. Council Chair Waters.
Thank you so much. You know, my point of introducing this is that if assessed values are too high, Kamaaina families may be forced to sell their property. And that's really sad. And the idea, by capping it, perhaps we can keep Kamaaina families in their home. I do agree with Councilmember Kiaina that perhaps this bill, Bill 42, should be put in a larger discussion if we do create another permitted interaction group. So I have no problem deferral of Bill 42 at this time. But I'd love to keep the discussion going because ultimately the whole idea is to keep our local families here in Honolulu. Thank you.
Thank you. Members, as for discussion, I understand that we do have a goal to stand up a permanent interaction group again as well to talk about the comprehensive real property tax structure and bills such as this. I do feel, though, that this is a first reading bill. I do feel that it would be great to push this for public hearing and bring it back to committee after we do have public hearing. And then I can work on figuring out a timeline for a future permitted interaction group because right now we don't have any resolution to discuss such a matter, but allow for public hearing for not just this, but other first reading bills. These are just first reading. I would love to allow for public hearing at the full council and then have it back in committee and then look at deferral then and action on a future permitted interaction group. So that's my comment, and I guess that would be my recommendation. Any other discussion, council members say?
Yes, is it possible, Director Kawano, is it possible with a new methodology And the concept for me, as far as the methodology, is that we separate our real property tax assessments, which you are already doing, but maybe freezing the fee side of the property and not the improvement side. You see what I'm getting at? The total property tax is my improvement, my real estate. If everyone is talking about let's preserve the real estate because my improvement is so minimal as a home that's 40-something years old, I'm just trying to figure out what Chair Waters wants to do as far as protecting the Kamainas, which is they're getting hit on the fee simple property, the land. I don't believe it's in the improvement because I don't believe they have improved their homes if they don't have that kind of money to pay for their property taxes. So I don't know if any municipality has had this type of a discussion. Improvements is one sector, real estate is the other sector. And if you want to try to freeze the real estate side, that's a great discussion to have. Because on the improvement side, I believe this county is collecting a lot of money on the condominiums. The units that each individual owner pays real property tax on. So I bring this up just for discussion, Madam Chair. I don't know what else we can do. As far as others had the, what's that, the old days? They froze the real property tax. I forget the name or that phrase they used. But those are thoughts that the predecessors had, that you would freeze it until you sell it and then you get punched with the increased values of what you sold it for.
Councilmember Say, thank you for those thoughts. Creative, but I still think it bucks against the methodology, because however you cut it, if we were to cap only the land portion, the fee portion, obviously it's going to apply to certain homes. So when you have people starting up in workforce housing and all of that, to balance out our revenue base, these other homeowners are going to have to pay more, or we're going to have a reduction in revenue base, and that would mean we would have to cut costs, cut services. So I hear you, but it still goes back to how pure do we want to keep the methodology? Because it's still a cap, whether you cap all of it or just the fee portion, or something else. We're still not letting market valuation flow in its purest form.
Madam Chair, I just make a statement. That's why I'm really pleased to have this type of discussion. For the general public out there at large, they have to realize our only sole income is real property tax. And this past 2 months, I applaud the council leadership and yourself in regards to Bill 30 and was it 41? 37 and 40, plus the mayor's measure also. That's the kind of aggressive approach to take. But I hear what Director Kawano is saying, that have we cranked in all of that lost revenues for fiscal year 25? And that is a concern for me. Because fiscal year 35 is coming around next year already, and we're all up for so forth. But I just wanted to see if we could ask our counterparts on the state capitol for some support and help. No, for real. I'll be coming up with some ideas just to generate revenues for the county of Oahu outside of real property tax. Okay? See how far it goes with the state legislature. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Say. Director Crono, I have a question. How does based off of the discussion, I do have a question relating to the valuation cap, and how does that affect the assessed valuation of a home that has undergone substantial improvements?
Well, the way the current bill is written, it wouldn't. necessarily have, I think that we're going to have to look at the cap section in the current bill from a technical standpoint, because if there's improvements, there's an exception, right? So if you have improvements on the home, and if the improvements are substantial, let's say you double the size of the home, within what's allowed by code, you could easily, add 50% to the value. The way the proposed bill is written, the 8% would not apply. The cost of home improvement would drive the assessed value. So if the home improvement increases the value of the parcel by 50%, it's going to go up by, the way I read it, it'll go up by 50%.
Okay. Thank you for that response. Okay, Member Say.
Madam Chair, I believe Director Kawano hit it on the head. Our problem today is that the district that we represent, most of the homes are 35, 40 years old. Maybe in those days, 30 years ago, it was $180,000 to $200,000 for the construction of the home. Now I'm faced, as far as residents telling me, if I tear down my home at the valuation of what the city had said, but the replacement value is at $800,000 just for the home, not for the fee. That's where, I don't have the answer, because it is a replacement cost that I have to find a loan for. But if I keep it the way it is, it becomes much more older, and it's not going to be, habitable. That's the way I see it. But I just wanted to share that because I don't have the answers about how to address this real estate market, really. And I am concerned because the general public should be aware that any project 60% AMI and below, it has to be subsidized 100% by government. No way a developer is going to put up their money and not going to get a return. And that's the issue. So this is great that we're having the discussion. The public out there is listening to our discussion, and we're having a great time. But I just bring this up because, it's not for myself. It's for the next generation. Are they going to be able to live here? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Members, I did state that I do want to continue the conversation, and then when we do stand up a permanent interaction group, hold it in committee so we can discuss this, if we do that. But with that, for today, I do want to move this forward. So Chair recommends, first off, the CD1, that Bill 42, 2023 be amended to a posted CD1. Any discussion? Any objections, reservations? The bill has been amended to a CD1. The chair then recommends that Bill 42, 2023, CD1, be reported out for second reading and scheduling of a public hearing. Any discussion? Any objections? Any reservations? Hearing none, so ordered. Okay, moving forward. Bill 39, 2023, establishes a real property tax exemption for real property located near an active landfill. Members, we have a proposed CD1 at OCS 2023-0665/7/19/2023, 2:18 p.m. submitted by Council Chair Waters. For your information, the amendments are listed on the agenda. Chair Waters, would you like to lay us up into the resolution, and then we'll call up the director.
Yes, please. Thank you so much. People who live near landfills bear a very unique burden. There's increased traffic, large trucks coming through your neighborhood. It's noisy. There could be smell and possible runoff. In exchange for this burden, I'm asking the council to consider giving these folks a break by not charging them property taxes. If you live within 1 mile of a landfill, basically that's what it is. And I appreciate the discussion and hopeful passage.
Thank you. Do you have any discussion on your CD1 or no?
No, nothing further. It's, as you mentioned, it's in the agenda.
Okay. Thank you. Director Kawano.
For the record, Andy Kawano, Director of Budget and Fiscal Services. With regard to Bill 39, 2023. I think it's important that BFS share some information. So our interpretation of the bill and resulting fiscal impact of residential properties adjacent to the Waimanalo Gulch Sanitary and the PVT landfills would approximate $7.2 million in the loss of revenue. So if we highlight the boundary from, if we go 1 mile outward from the boundary of the landfill that we're talking about, we include about 4,300 residential parcels. Some of the parcels have a market value in excess of $2 million. So there's some highly valued parcels as well. The taxes, again, related to those 4,300 residential parcels is about $7.2 million, based on the assessments, the notices of assessment in effect for fiscal year 24. To have impacted residential properties pay a minimum $300 or no real property taxes ignores their market value and the city's financial obligation to provide core services to those properties. You know, and there are also other properties experiencing similar adverse influences, also known as external obsolescence, that could be related to electrical power plants, convenience centers, wastewater treatment processing plants. So there are other issues, you know, other concerns that are out there. And the question BFS has is, where will it end? So we do one, where does it end? And then where are we going to make up those revenues? And yeah, we definitely feel that it'd be great to have discussion, you know, on this going forward, and having discussion at a newly set up permitted interaction group, I think would be good, because we don't see equity, and then we obviously, as I mentioned, see fiscal issues that are going to have to be addressed. And then where does it end?
Thank you.
That's all.
Members, any questions for Director Kawano? Okay, hold on. All right. Okay, so Council Chair Waters.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Director, for that information. You're saying there's 4,300 parcels that would be affected. That's within a mile radius of both the Waimanalo Gulch and PVT, right?
From the outer boundaries going out a mile.
Okay.
Yep.
Were you able to break out if for each landfill, Waimanalo Gulch and PVT, how much parcels surround each of them at 1 mile?
I think we can. Steve.
That might be helpful.
We can provide that at a later date.
Okay, wonderful. And then just out of curiosity, are you able to provide, if we lowered it from 1 mile to a mile, how many parcels would be affected?
Is that a trick?
Excuse me, 1 mile to a half mile.
Okay.
So two questions, right? One is if you divide it up between PVT and
yes, we can definitely do that.
and then
half mile.
also a half mile. Yeah,
Yeah.
that would be super helpful, because
Yeah.
I think if you include 1 mile from Waimanalo Gulch, you're including Ko'olina. And those are the properties you spoke of that are in excess
Yeah, right
of
on
$1 million.
the fringe. Yeah. Correct.
Okay, I mean, that might be more helpful, and it may affect folks who are immediately next to this landfill rather than folks who might be a mile away.
That's correct, Chair.
Okay, and your concern is that as currently defined, landfills may include convenience stations? Or are you just being extra
so
cautious?
the question I had was, so we do this one, right? Let's say this gets adopted, and we have a waiver of taxes going out from for a certain distance from the outer boundary, right, of this landfill. There are going to be other community groups that are going to want the same thing for sewage treatment plants, maybe for convenience centers, you know, and other situations where you have, you know, high traffic, you know, possibility for dust and infiltration of, you know, different kinds of smells and, you know, other issues that can come up. So where is it going to end? Right? Once we do one, and you know, the thought is, if we are truly following the methodology of assess valuation, when you have those areas that have the kind of issues that you brought up, Chair, in theory, the assessed valuation should not rise as much as a home in Kahala or Manoa or Hawaii Kai, where you don't have those types of facilities. So, you know, what I'm trying to say is that the valuation process has a built-in mechanism to factor in these kinds of nuisances that impact, you know, sales activity for those types of property. So the properties in these areas should be lower per square foot, and you know, we can do some analysis, and the methodology already factors in valuation for homes.
No, I hear you, but one community, namely on the west side, has been disproportionately impacted for years and years by having the landfill on that side of the island. And it's just recognizing that and giving back a little bit. I hear what you're saying, that it could be a slippery slope and that everybody who lives near any city facility might come and ask us for relief. But the fact of the matter is, I mean, we're not talking about a lot of people here that are going to be impacted, but it's just a gesture that we're making to say we appreciate the fact that you're willing to do this. Interestingly, we need to cite a new landfill site, and perhaps this could be somewhat of a acknowledgement that it is a burden to live next to a landfill. And I do find that landfills are different from convenience centers, and landfills are different from wastewater treatment centers. Having said that, I look forward to finding out whether or not we reduce it to a half a mile and not include Waimanalo Gulch or PVT, one or the other, whether or not that would make a huge difference in lost revenue. Because at this point, as you pointed out, as the bill currently reads, there's 4,300 parcels, and it'd be a lost revenue of $7.2 million, that perhaps if we take a scalpel and further define and work on this bill, that it could be considerably less of a revenue loss to the city. So appreciate that. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. I saw Council Vice Chair Kia Aina's hand up. Please proceed.
Thank you, Chair. Director Kawano, is your $7.2 million estimate of cost, is that taking into account that many of these residents may probably be on Hawaiian homelands and are already paying the minimum tax? I just want to know how you factored in costs here. Did you do it for fee simple homes or leasehold?
So we included all of the parcels, you know, within the 1 mile radius as defined from the outer boundaries of the landfill and the PVT plant. So it includes, it's everything, you know, all.
But what percentage of those lands are Hawaiian homelands?
I don't know off the top, but if they were Hawaiian homelands and if those parcels are at minimum tax, the $7.2 million would have included those parcels at the minimum tax.
Oh, okay. I just want to make sure that that was factored in, and I want to echo the concerns of Chair Waters with regard to the inclusion of Ko'olina, because and how, if this measure continues to move forward, it would have to be modified.
Yes, and you're absolutely right what you're alluding to, Vice Chair. I mentioned earlier that some of the parcels have values in excess of $2 million. That's definitely going towards Ko'olina.
Absolutely. I mean, you need to know there's, in addition to townhouses, there's actually single-family homes in there as well.
That's correct, yes.
And so the condos are actually over, a lot of them are over $1 million. So the homes will likely be over $2 million. So, but thank you for that. And I just wanted to understand your 7.2 million costs, but I'll be watching as the measure moves forward. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Council Vice Chair Kiaina. And I know that that's a valid question about how many properties are under DHHL, as well as market rate or other types of properties. Is that something that we can request from BFS and DPP to work with?
Yes, I'm sure, not now, but yeah, the mapping team and the appraisers can pull together a schedule. And yeah, that's a good point brought up by Vice Chair and Chair. If you shrink the radius, perhaps a larger mix would be the homeland type at the minimum tax assessment. And therefore, the number, the $7.2 million is much less. So we can look at that. Yeah.
So I have a few questions relating to the bill. First off, relating to your comments, I should say, relating to convenience centers and other types of treatment centers or plants, because do you, at the top of your head, currently know which type of zoning and area neighborhoods allows for convenience centers and treatment plants?
I don't have a total catalog in my head of all of that, but the concern we have is that, you know, when you do one, you're going to open the floodgates for more. And so where does it end?
And
we don't know.
And if we're focusing, let's say, just on residential real property and in relation to convenience centers and treatment plants, and maybe I'm only biased because I know I have Sand Island wastewater treatment plant. I also have, I have convenience centers in my district, and a lot of them are, I guess, further than a mile away than real residential real property, as opposed to the proximity of active landfills in proximity to other residential real property neighborhoods. So that's the reason why I asked that question, because I know that you said, when does it stop? But if we're looking at residential real property and the effects for active landfills there, you know, that's a way we can make a determination or a distinction for such real property exemptions. So I just wanted to ask if you had that. Okay, members, any other questions for BFS? Okay, all right. Thank you. I don't know what that was, but thank you very much. Okay, moving forward to testifiers. We don't have any remote registered testifiers, but I do see Angela Melody Young available online.
Aloha, Chair, Vice Chair, and the City Council council members. Angela Melody Young testifying on behalf of CARES in strong support. The amendment to Chapter 8 does not include the specific trash sites, PVT, and Waimanalo Gulch. So I think that's really smart because it will be affected when the Waimanalo Gulch is set to close in 2028. This past year, 214,000 tons of waste went to the Oahu's Waimanalo Gulch Sanitary Landfill, a municipal solid waste landfill in Kapolei that was started in 1987. According to the State Land Use Commission, because the city is in charge of municipal waste management, it will have to identify an alternative landfill by the end of 2022 and close the Waimanalo Gulch by 2028. In 2017, a report put together by a consulting group deemed 11 of the potential locations as not okay because Act 73 from 2020 declared that landfills can't be near conservation zones or within half a mile of a residential area or school or hospital. And the 11 sites are no longer available, and now the city is assessing new potential locations. So that's just something to consider as this discussion moves forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Members, we do have registered online as well. Mr. T. George Paris, is he available online?
Good morning. Budget.
Sorry, we'll call you up in a moment, and we're doing remote.
I'm testifying on his behalf.
Okay, wait. We'll do remote first, and then I'll call in person. Okay, thank you. Okay, is there anyone else online who wishes to testify? Okay, seeing none. Okay, for in-person testifiers, please proceed.
Good morning, Budget Chair, Vice Chair, Chair Waters. On behalf of Executive Managing Director T. George Paris, you received his written testimony. I wanted to make some additional comments. For years, residents around PVT, and I bring to your attention the attachment to his testimony. As you can see, if you look at this map, PVT is adjacent to people's homes. I mean, it's not like there is a buffer zone or anything. It's right next to it. And residents have testified for years that the home downwind, that the windows next to the facing the landfill have to remain closed all the time. We suspected that there was a negative impact on the community. Then the CDC did a study. They worked with a number of different groups, the U.S. Small Area Life Expectancy Estimates Project. And what we found is it's a project that determines life expectancy of every census tract in the entire country. And what we found was the two census tracts around PVT, Nanakuli and Lualule, have the second and third lowest life expectancies of the entire state, in the entire state. There's a 10-year loss. The statewide average is 82, is 72. This validated, I think, the concerns that people have felt for a long time, right? That they've exposed, it's an open landfill, so whenever there's any activity, things go airborne. The homes are right next to it, right? So the impact, I think, has been suspected. We feel strongly anyway that this, and please look at the website. If you want, they even explain the methodology behind how they came up with this information. I'd encourage council members to take a look at this, but we feel strongly that this validates the feelings that residents have had for a long time. And in the name of environmental justice, I think this is a good way to at least start to try to compensate the people that have been endured this landfill right next to them for 30+ years. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, is there anyone else who wishes to testify in person? Please come up. Oh, actually, can I have the last testifier? Sorry, Ashley. I know your name, but can you come up and state your name for the record, please? I forgot to ask you that.
Clyde Hayashi.
Thank you. Okay. Next.
Clyde. Aloha, my name is Mel Kahele, and thank you, Chair, Vice Chair, Chair Waters, for allowing me to speak today. I was here at our last hearing when we had the full council. I've been living on the west side for 50 years, originally from Windward side, born and raised on the Windward side. I got a lot of family on both ends. My family in Hauula, in Honolulu, in Kaneohe, the majority of them live 80, 90 years old. My dad passed away at 86. My mom passed away at 93. They live on the Windward side. 50 years on the Leeward Coast, I noticed my family members die at an earlier age. They live right next to PVT. Many of them live on the Hawaiian homelands, 50 feet away from the landfill. Landfills have been on the leeward coast for 85 years. We've had enough. And I think with this bill,
Please conclude, and then we'll move on to the next
okay,
testifier.
all right, I will conclude. We've had enough. 10 years of our lives are being lost with this CDC census tract survey, and the bill doesn't include Waimanalo Gulch. It refers to PVT landfill. We can resolve this problem. Take the landfills out of our district. Take them out of the leeward coast. Why is the landfills always on Hawaiian communities? Thank you.
Thank you.
Almost took.
Okay, do you have any other in-person testifiers?
James K. Monaco, senior concerned parent, grandparent, and great-grandparent. PVT is a hazardous waste. Landfill gang. That's what it is. Have you folks ever smelled the hazardous waste landfill? We had a fire there. You know how many months it took? It took over about a year to extinguish. You know what a hazardous waste smells like? Do you folks know? It's right in our community. People live right alongside a hazardous waste landfill that you folks don't approve. We don't, my God. So, hazardous waste landfill is not what we need in our community. And you folks don't approve them right next to several Hawaiian settlements over there that we have. So please, let's not have any more. How can we convince you folks? This the last people in the world is us Hawaiians here. Please protect us. You folks sitting behind this desk, the only ones that can do that. Really. You guys going to come down in history. You know when we read about protecting the Hawaiian people?
Thanks, Mr. Kamada.
You guys going to be in the books. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Ms. Cadero, Mrs. or Miss. But you guys going to be coming down in our history books. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, is there anyone else who wishes to testify in person?
Hello, Chair, Vice Chair. My name is Ed Warner. A lot of you guys probably recognize me. I was on the news with DK Movement. That's I represent my son, Kalana Warner, that was killed by an impaired driver. I just wanted to tell you guys a backstory about where I come from. I'm a longtime resident of Nanakuli. Grandma came from Molokai. Grandpa came from Molokai. Grandma came from Big Island. My dad's side came from Maui. We all reside in a beautiful place called Nanakuli. I was born and raised in Nanakuli over 60 years. My mom's side family came to Nanakuli in the 1930s. My dad's side resigned in Nanakuli for the 1930s. My wife's side. So I can stand here and say I'm a long-time resident of this Nanakuli. PVT came into our backyard. My dad brought a home back in the 1960s along PVT on Mohihi Street. So when PVT came into our backyard in 1987, right, the front yard of the landfill was our backyard. We used to play there. It was a beautiful park at one time. Beautiful park. But that got all taken away. Our canal got cut off. you know, as a resident of Nanakuli, you know, I was born and raised in Nanakuli, and I can pretty much come up here and tell you guys all about the beautiful of Nanakuli. You know, in old days, they thought we were blind and deaf because people came into our community wanted water. And in order to save our water, our people was, you know, acting like they were deaf and blind. But, you know, we no longer deaf and blind. You know, I come in here today, I live on Farrington Highway for years and years, but I was raised up alongside that landfill. My dad passed away. I can stay here and let you guys know that everybody got wiped out by some kind of disease, and that's the truth. My dad was 2 years ago. And as I stand here, and I said, why not give my community, as a leader of our community, I'm a strong advocate. I do whatever gotta do to make things pono, make things right. And that is saying that please help our kupuna. I probably lived on the outside of that 1 mile because I live on the beginning of Farrington, which I call it the mouth of the river. Everybody flows into past my house.
Thank you. Mr. Warner, do you support the resolution?
I do, and I please, if you guys all can support that, because it's very important for all of us. People that live in that community been overwhelmed and suffered. I mean, the hundreds of trucks pass my home.
Thank you.
And a lot of people that live around there, my kids live around the landfill, my family, my aunties, my uncle.
Thank you, Mr. Warner. May I have you please
tell you
conclude?
guys, please, down deep, as I come forward here, please support this, because it's going to do well for our community. Mahalo.
Mahalo. Thank you. Okay, thank you. Is there anyone else who wishes to testify in person? Okay, thank you very much. Okay, members, we are back in discussion. Back in discussion. Council Chair Waters.
Thank you very much. I mean, we heard from community members that, as Mr. Warner just pointed out, hundreds and hundreds of trucks driving through that community, increased traffic, increased noise, smell, runoff, things of that nature. And this is a small thing that we can do to try to make up for that. So appreciate a favorable consideration. Thank you.
Thank you. Committee Vice Chair Wire.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, just would echo support for the measure. Mahalo, the introducer. I think Budget Chair brought up a great point about residential properties versus, you know, maybe industrial zoned properties where other city infrastructure exists. And of course, we heard from the testifiers about the negative impact on the community. And from an environmental justice perspective, understanding that the bill right now, I believe, only applies to C&D waste, I think that the financial impact on the city would actually be fairly minimal. So I look forward to getting the information back from Budget and Fiscal Services. Mahalo.
Thank you very much. Members, any other discussion? Okay, we have our Council Vice Chair, Kia Aina.
Thank you, Chair. This is a very good dialogue, and I'm very empathetic to all those who testified today. A lot of my family live in Nanakuli, so I'm quite aware of the circumstances there. I would say this, and the data from Department of Budget and Fiscal Services is important, because if a large percentage of those homes are Hawaiian homelands, then the financial benefit for them is minimal, because it's $300, and of course the cost to the city is minimal. So while I support the bill, I think that we collectively need to determine how we could improve the quality of life for those residents there, and look for other ways to mitigate the impacts, including its closure. So that's all. I just want to say that I'm concerned that the actual impact for those who may be Hawaiian homeland beneficiaries will be minimal, and I believe they deserve better. And there has to be other ways for us to help them. That's all. But appreciate the dialogue and support the measure. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Okay. Members, the Chair recommends that Bill 39, 2023 be amended to the posted CD1. Any discussion? Any objections, reservations? Hearing none, then bill has been amended to a CD1. The chair then recommends that Bill 39, 2023, CD1 be reported out for second reading and scheduling of a public hearing. Any discussion? Okay, I'm looking forward to the information from BFS for council or for the next committee after a public hearing. Okay, any further discussion? Any objections? Okay, any reservations? Hearing none, so ordered. Okay, members, before I move on to agenda item number 7, I do want to note that we did hear some beautiful singing that we heard outside of the council chambers down in the Honolulu Hale courtyard. And entering the council chambers right now, we have the Ilocos Norte singing group here. Wow, there's a lot of you. Oh, okay, I didn't expect to see this many people. There's 30 people. Okay, there's 30. Wow, hi. Hi. Okay, I know. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for your indulgence for welcoming the Ilocos Norte singing group. May I have someone from the group who will represent the group just to give an introduction? Members, are you all okay with this? Awesome. Thank you. We heard your beautiful singing. Is there anyone who will be able to come up and talk? Anyone from the group to give an introduction? Oh, can I have you press on, off? On, off. And I do want to let you know that we are in the middle of our committee hearing. And first off, we want to introduce ourselves. We are your Honolulu City Council Budget Committee and council members here. And we just want to let you know that we could hear you guys singing downstairs. Okay, please proceed.
Yes, first of all, I'm Lawrence Patricio. I'm one of their event organizers here in Honolulu, Hawaii, together with my co-organizer, Ms. Adela Salaku. And this is sponsored by the Naktikaloquan, headed by Reverend Alex Vergara. They will be having their concert on July 29 at the Waipahu Intermediate School. So may we take this opportunity to invite each and every one of you, if you're available on that time. The concert will start at 6 o'clock in the evening. Please join us on the concert, cultural concert on July 29. The group is from Ilocos Norte. They are from Ilocos Norte National High School. And furthermore, I would like to request the main conductor of the group, Mr. Sherwin Cabrales, to introduce their group specifically.
Hello, everyone.
One moment, sorry, I have to recess the meeting since this is not on agenda. Chair would like to call this meeting to a recess, but we'll still continue on. Okay, please.
Hello, everyone. My name is Sherwin Fresca Cabrales. I am the conductor of the Sami Weng Singers. Sami Weng is a combination of two Ilocano words. We have Samit and Aweng. Samit means sweet, and then Aweng means sound. So it's like sweet sound. That is the trademark of the group. So I have here with me the Sami Weng Singers. Hello.
Great to meet you. And so we're still in our meeting, but would you like to stay, and then we would like, if possible, take a photo after with the council members. But please stay with us. We are still in our our committee meeting, and we would like to continue our business. And then for those members that would like to take a picture with the singers, can do so after. So just give us like 20 minutes, okay?
Fine.
Thank you. Okay, members would like to call this Committee on Budget back to order. All right, members, going back to agenda item we're going back to the agenda item number 7 to address the real property tax home exemption for Bill 34, 2023. With that, it was introduced by Committee Vice Chair Wire. I would like to allow for the Committee Vice Chair Wire to discuss his bill before I bring up Director Kawano for Budget and Fiscal Services. Committee Vice Chair Wire on Bill 34.
Mahalo, Chair. Bill 34 would increase the homeowner exemption to $250,000, the kupuna exemption to $300,000, to just, be commensurate with the dramatic increases in property values that we saw. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Director Kawano from the Department of Budget and Fiscal Services.
For the record, Andy Kawano, Director of Budget and Fiscal Services. So just want to share some information with regard to this bill. We just adopted Bill 40 to raise the exemption from $100,000 to $120,000. And then for those 65 and over, from $140,000 to $160,000. So with the understanding that the 151,000 homeowners with exemptions are split almost evenly between those just under age 65 and then with respect to the group 65 and over, the fiscal impact of these increases is $71.4 million. So, and these increases go in effect in a future year. The concern we have is the fiscal impact, and we even more so agree that we should have a discussion comprehensively that includes this bill and all of the other bills so we can not only assess each bill by category, by grouping, but also talk about the fiscal impact to the city. So that's what I wanted to raise and share with council members. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Members, any other questions for Director Kawano?
Yes, Chair.
Yeah.
Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Okay.
Mahalo, Director, I just wanted to clarify when we're talking about financial impact on the city, and you mentioned, what was it again, 71 million? Okay.
71.
So that 71 million is operating 100% within the framework we have without any other adjustments or use of the tools you mentioned before. Is that correct?
That, yeah, it's by itself, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's not factoring in whether this council would adjust rates to maybe shift the application of the RPT.
Yes, it doesn't factor in anything else.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so, in fact, if we looked at rate adjustments with an increase in exemption amount, such as the one in Bill 34, we could actually increase revenue while reducing RPT payments on lower valued homes. Is that your understanding?
If you raise the tax rates enough, you can make the impact revenue neutral just for this bill itself. You could do that, yes.
Okay. And so just throwing that out there, because I don't think it's a cure-all, and so I'd agree with you that we wouldn't want to just throw in an exemption amount that stands alone and decreases city revenue. But I do think that it's commensurate with the increase in values that we saw recently, commensurate with the exemption amounts seen by some of our neighbor island communities, not all, but I think Maui is the one with a little bit higher. And just in light of the fact that prior to the increase that we just had, prior to that, it's been several years. And so I guess the question I would have from that would be just, if we're looking at how few times that the exemption amount's been increased over the past, 5-10 years, and compare that to the dramatic increase we saw last year, let alone the increases that we've seen over the past years, right? Would you say that this is more commensurate with the increase if we're paralleling the exemption amount to the value of the home? Or, I guess, in other words, would you say that the $20,000 increase we did is commensurate with the actual increase in values that property owners saw?
I think the $20,000 increase was a partial move to where we have to be. But if I recall right, we wanted to be, I think, diligent And we wanted to evaluate what the change in the one-time credit and the income limitation would have to our tax revenues. So I think we went into it cautiously, but it wasn't the final set of adjustments, because my understanding was that we'd go back into the interaction group and have discussion. Hopefully have more data, on how many applications were filed and, what could be the impact to our tax base. So, yeah, I know for a fact, just listening to what we hear from public, that a lot of homeowners are taking a hard look at the increase in the income limit for the low income tax credit. So my assumption is there's going to be a significant increase in applications filed by October 2nd, 2023.
No, that's great to hear. So appreciate that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Director Kawano, I was wondering, does it achieve revenue neutrality with the new rate of residential A, the new residential A rate, I mean?
Yes, so for this current fiscal year, if you look at the changes at the tier level for residential A tax rates, we reduced the lower tier down to $4, from $4.50 to $4. We increased the upper tier for homes assessed at $1 million and more to $11.40 per thousand. That went from $10.50 to $11.40. Based on our FY24 real property data, by parcels, the goal was the changes were revenue neutral in all material respects.
Thank you. Okay, members, any other questions? Okay, we have Council Vice Chair Kia Aina.
Thank you, Chair. Director Kawano, could you explain the difference of the circumstances between what's going on in Maui County versus Honolulu, and why are they able to have a higher threshold for the homeowner's exemption, and why are we not able to? Can you explain the difference between the circumstances between the two counties?
I think the main difference is the fact that there's two major things from a demographic standpoint. Maui County relies a lot less on residential parcels to fund its real property tax base. The percentage is a lot lower. For Oahu, a larger percentage of our real property taxes are generated by residential and residential A parcels. So if we were to overlay Maui's tax rate and exemptions, we would have a very, very large reduction in tax revenues that would have to be made up somewhere else. I haven't done the calculation, but it would probably be, we're talking hundreds of millions of dollars. So where would we increase taxes to make up that difference? Would it be, an increase in tax rates for the commercial and industrial classes? That's a much smaller group, so their tax rates would have to increase significantly to be revenue neutral. And then if we cannot keep the changes revenue neutral, if we adopt Maui's tax rates and exemptions for residential parcels, then we have to look at an expense side, right, of our operating budget and cut the operating budget, cut services. So I think it starts with demographics first. Oahu is very different from Maui, apples and oranges.
Okay, well, I look forward to working with you, hopefully once this new permitted interaction group is reorganized. And the reason is, I think all of us would like to see an increase in the threshold, but I think we have to be fiscally responsible in the manner of how we move forward on this. And so I think it's important for us to understand the difference between what's going on in the other counties and what's going on in Honolulu. and the fiscal ramifications of any increased homeowners exemption amount. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Council Vice Chair Kia Aina. Members, any discussion? Okay, Committee Vice Chair Wire.
Thank you, Chair. And I appreciate BFS's input as always in all the work that they're doing. Just wanted to note that, of course, this isn't a cure-all bill, and I look forward to continued conversations about how we can modify and update our real property tax framework. Ultimately, I think what this is reflective of what the homeowner exemption should be if we maintain the current system. Because we have seen such a dramatic increase in property values. And while I appreciate the work that we did, and I know the community appreciates it, I do think that the increase we recently saw was just the beginning step. The increase in the exemption, rather, that we just did is just the beginning step. And, you know, when we're seeing homes having gone up 20, 30, 40%, I think this is reflective of the need in the community. I'm open to completely revamping the framework, getting rid of the exemption system, and doing another mechanism, considering, you know, like we've talked about, how do we target, when Director Quano mentions who should be paying, so how do we target out-of-state investment properties to shift the direction of our housing market? That's just one avenue, right? We're looking at pushing the vacation rental units into the market. You know, DPP's indicated we have 36,000 vacant properties on this island. And so just a chunk of those in our housing market, along with the property, you know, creation, the construction and the new housing that we're building, I think could move us along quite far. And so just wanted to share that, you know, this is just what I think is fair if we're going to keep down this path. And just wanted to note that I fully want to fund the city and our first responders, our firefighters, our police. But I think when we're looking at how to structure our tax framework, we need to start with where the community need is, and then work out from there towards where the funding is, versus starting from how much can we start cutting from the city, and then make these little incremental changes. So appreciate that. Mahalo, Chair.
Thank you. Okay. Moving forward to testifiers, there are no remote registered testifiers. Is there anyone else online? I see Angela Melody Young.
Aloha, Angela Melody Young, testifying on behalf of CARES in strong support of the homeowner exemptions, you know, because it provides equity for homeowners and to support the city's operating budget. While we're discussing this subject matter, there should be exemptions for Hawaiian homeowners, but that may be a discussion for the Director Watson from DHHL and the reps from Act 279, the Hawaii Homes Working Group, which includes Representative Holt, the Chair of Economic Development, and Rep. Tarnas, the House Chair of Judiciary and Hawaiian Affairs, because they recently discussed the strategic plan to address assistance for new homeowners. So a homeowner's exemption could be helpful. And I wish to comment generally about the real property tax, because there isn't a specific bill about this, and I don't know when the next PIG meeting is, but about education and real property tax. Hawaii is the only state to not have a property tax to support the education system. And again, taxes are sometimes levied to discourage certain types of behavior, smoking, drinking. So those are sin taxes. And the most important reason to levy taxes is the root. Okay, thank you.
Okay, is there anyone else online who wishes to testify? Okay, moving on to in-person testifiers. Is there anyone in person who wishes to testify? Okay, seeing none. Members, we are back in discussion. This is a first reading bill, and I do want to, of course, allow for more of our members to have this discussion as well. So with that, the chair recommends that Bill 434, 2023 be reported out for second reading and scheduling of a public hearing. Any discussion? Any objections? Reservations? Hearing none, so ordered.
Chair.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Let me go back. Councilmember Kia Aina.
Chair, I will vote with reservations. I think all of us would like to increase the threshold. I'm concerned that As we do so, we need to ensure that we are fiscally responsible. And so we should be looking simultaneously at tools to get us to increase the revenues because $70 million is a lot.
Yes. Thank you very much, Council Vice Chair Kia Aina. So any other further discussions? Any objections? Noting the reservations of Council Vice Chair Kia Aina, hearing none, so ordered. Moving forward to agenda item number 8, we have Bill 40, 2023, which establishes additional requirements for the Transit Construction Mitigation Fund, introduced by Councilmember Dos Santos Tam and myself. Basically, this is a similar bill that was introduced in 2018 by my predecessor, former Councilmember Joy Manahan. And I know there have been discussions about this from before construction has even occurred on the rail project, but this also allows for the Budget and Fiscal Services to work with the related businesses, and would like to invite from the City Administration, Director Andy Kawano from the Budget and Fiscal Services to provide discussion on Bill 40, 2023.
Thank you, Budget Chair Cordero. For the record, Andy Kawano, Director of Budget and Fiscal Services. Honorable council members, yes, we've taken a look at Bill 40, 2023. As Budget Chair mentioned, it's the second similar bill to the one that happened in 2018. Based on what I understand, the Transit Mitigation Fund or Construction Mitigation Fund is still exists, but is inactive. There's no funding in it. The question BFS has is, how do council members plan to fund this mitigation fund? That's the first one. The second question and comment that we have is, where will it end? Because I think we've been sharing some data on parcels that are adjacent to Dillingham Boulevard from Middle Street to the Liliha area. And if we were to provide any kind of relief, the concern is, what happens with respect to property owners, business owners from the past, as the rail was constructed through Waipahu and Pro City. So that's the other common question we have. And then what happens going forward? The cost or the loss of revenue will not end just with the Dillingham area, what we've been talking about recently. Probably the most important thing is, how do you determine the harm that people have been complaining about from rail construction is caused purely by rail construction? How do we go about auditing or validating through financial information and records submitted by the parcel owners that rail construction is truly the primary cause of their suffering, their harm? It's going to take a lot of work. It's going to require probably a new unit of BFS staff to do the analysis, because it's not real property appraisal. It's more of an audit process. It would be more of an audit process, and it's going to be quite costly. So I put that out there for discussion. Yeah, I think this one's going to be difficult to implement.
Thank you. And what criteria, just looking at the bill, would you consider would be deemed appropriate to apply for such type of fund? If you were to look at this and be like, if we have to do it, what would the criteria have to be?
Oh, there's gonna have to be proof of loss of business if you're talking about a commercial operation. At the same time, how do we isolate all of the different causes of a loss, operating loss? And we're probably going to have to look at a number of years. I don't think we can just look at 1 year, because there could be other circumstances that causes a business to struggle, like rent. What if the landlord increased rent, you know, currently? So that could impact a business. You know, personnel issues, you know, hiring issues that we all encounter, but everybody's encountering that.
Right.
Could impact a business and the revenues of a business. So how do you break everything down and isolate it? It would take a lot of work. And I think we'd have to look at a multiple number of years.
Multiple number of years, and then let's say there are some businesses that do not have such. Oh, I mean, let's go back to the whole businesses. A lot of the businesses are leasing, right, from a major property owner along the rail corridor, whether it be the state, the Bishop Estates, or anyone else. And we do not have that determination or possibility to determine how to transfer that relief to the business owners.
That's a good point, Budget Chair. The property taxes are paid by the title holders, the landowners. They have the authority to pass it down to tenants, to the renters. So if tax relief is provided to the property owner, we have no control as to whether or not the relief passes through to the renter or tenant. That you brought up a good point. So using, you know, this type of funding to the owners doesn't necessarily mean that you know, the renters will get benefit.
Right. And also for the current bill at hand, it's mainly focusing on the current construction along Dillingham, of course, and moving forward. Would we be able? Do you have any viable, I guess, alternatives on how to assist such, I guess, property mitigation funds or real property mitigation for businesses, if not through such mitigation fund? I don't know if that makes sense.
I think this is going to have to be I don't think property tax funded mitigation is the answer. You know, all of these businesses continue to receive services. You know, services won't stop, whether it's public service, you know, sewer, water, whatever that we provide. So that services will continue. I think we have to have discussion to, you know, identify, you know, other mitigation approaches that are available. But you know, the hardest, the most difficult thing is how do you truly isolate construction as the cause to the harm?
Understood. Thank you. This is our first reading bill, of course, and I know that my co-introducer would be hopefully would be able to provide further discussion also in council. So with that, oh, just kidding, he's actually here. I don't know if you wanted to join Councilmember Dos Santos Tam. I would also like to welcome to the committee Councilmember Dos Santos Tam. Okay, so, do I have any other questions? Okay, I'll wait. Councilmember Dos Santos Tam, do you have any questions for Director Kawano?
Have we asked any questions thus far?
I have already. Councilmember Dos Santos Tam, it's okay if you ask repeat questions, it's fine.
I guess I just want clarification. Part of the reason why the chair and I co-introduced this measure is since the fund was created in 2015, and at some point $750,000 was put in there, subsequently lapsed. Do you know why the department hasn't taken action on distributing the funds that were placed in there before? I know this predates you, but maybe someone in the department has provided that information to you.
I'm sorry, council member, I don't have that information. I don't know why it wasn't acted upon.
And I think part of where we're going with this is, we've seen the economic impact that businesses along the Kamehameha Highway corridor in Pearl City and Aiea and Waipahu have had. And as construction comes into town, we want to make sure that in executing this project, we're not inadvertently hurting these businesses. The chair and I both share the Dillingham corridor and have heard some pretty strong concerns from these businesses. As part of creating these rules to administer these funds, my office is doing a lot of research into what other cities have done. But I wanted to ask, the departments how amenable the department would be if we were to put monies into this fund to be able to administer those, to be able to disperse it, if that's where we're going with this. Is this a function that the department feels like it could take on?
I don't think we can take it on with our current staffing. We would probably have to tack on a unit of, accountant, auditor type skilled staff to go through financial records and to find a way to isolate, the harm caused by the construction component. And that'll be, I think, a challenge.
Then I know along the Dillingham corridor and subsequently further into downtown and Kaka'ako, there are a number of businesses that are adjacent to the corridor. With the real property division within BFS, is that division able to identify the parcels that would be most impacted, whether that's those that are directly adjacent or within a certain distance from the corridor? Is that something that division could help with?
That division has a mapping component, branch that can definitely do analysis, and they've provided some analysis already, along Dillingham Boulevard. So yes.
And then is there a way for the real property division?
Sorry, Councilmember Dos Santos Tam. Council Vice Chair Kia Aina has to make an announcement.
Yes, Chair, I'm going to have to leave.
Okay.
So thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Okay.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Okay, apologies, Councilmember Dos Santos Tam.
No. I think this would be my last question. You sort of alluded to this in a previous answer, but given the way that the city's property appraisal works, do you anticipate those businesses along Dillingham, or those properties along Dillingham, I should say, at any point having a lower valuation during the construction period than they would otherwise? I guess how would the department go about evaluating the value of these properties during the construction period and taking into account the diminished sort of economic opportunity as part of their property valuation?
So first of all, there will be, if construction is truly impacting businesses, reducing revenues, and so on, there'll be probably sales data showing pricing that's depressed. Businesses want to sell, move out of the area, prices will be lower. Typically, the way it works is the appraisers look at the most closest geographic area in proximity to the business, and then work outward if there's no sales data or cost data. So there should be reduction in valuations as a result of this kind of activity. But I can tell you what, from what I see, if you look at Costco, they look pretty busy, regardless of the construction. Their market and gas station, I don't think is missing a beat. I haven't heard of them being hurt by it. So there are some businesses probably doing okay, but yeah, I would think that the market data would be depressed if construction is truly impacting businesses in that area.
Thank you. Okay, members, any other questions? Okay, thank you. Once again, this is first reading bill. And I know there's a lot of also data and also information that we want to discuss moving forward. Moving to testifiers, we do not have any registered remote testifiers, but I do see Angela Melody Young available to testify.
Aloha, Angela Melody Young, testifying in strong support of HART, because CARES is always supportive of the train and all transit-oriented development. I mean, how many people complain about HART and now it's operating and people love it? The purpose of this ordinance will be to create the Transit Construction Mitigation Funds. Why should we support HART? Why does CARES support this? The project corridor is on the south shore of Oahu and is geographically constrained by the ocean to the south and 2 mountain ranges to the north. Numbers of workers commute into Honolulu from the west of the corridor. Highway travel is carried by the H1 freeway, which extends through the length of the corridor. The Honolulu bus system provides high quality service throughout the corridor. Service quality suffers substantially from mixed traffic operations and traffic congestion degrades. Schedule reliability and increases operating costs and exacerbates the bus capacity limitations on the highest ridership bus routes. In the end, the project is projected to reduce average transit travel times from the west to the urban core by 65 minutes. This is 29 minutes faster than the baseline.
Thank you, Angela.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so I need you for quorum. Okay. Oh, okay. Any other testifiers online? Okay, seeing none. Are there any testifiers who wishes to speak in person? Okay, seeing none, members back, we are back in discussion. Okay, the chair recommends that Bill 40, 2023 be reported out for second reading and scheduling of a public hearing. Any discussion? Any objections? Any reservations? Hearing none, so ordered. Okay, with that, there being no further business, this meeting is adjourned at 12:10 p.m.